but I'm passionate about Devil May Cry. Like I love this thing.
Yeah.
And I love this niche thing.
That's the most important
and now
thing.
I can take it and hopefully blow it up to a point where I can expand it and there'll be more of it.
Yep.
Right? So and I didn't know that there was a Devil May Cry 5 coming out.
You didn't know?
No.
Wow.
I got actually unhappy when they so I signed the deal and I'm like, yeah, great, I'm doing it. And then they're like, good news, we have Devil May Cry 5 coming out.
Were you hoping to play it before doing your adaptation? Is that what you're saying? Or you just...
No, I actually thought the franchise was dead.
Oh, I got you.
This was my thing. Like I liked Dino Crisis. I
see.
And I thought I was bringing this thing back, and I'm like, oh, this is like a modern fucking thing. Like this is ongoing. Then I should have done Street Fighter.
As you can see, Adi Shankar thought that he was going to be the beloved Dante for the Devil May Cry franchise, but after the disaster that was season 1, everyone could see that he was DMC Dante. Devil May Cry season 2 was better at a surface level, but almost as bad as the first season. I think most people just don't realize it because Lady only cussed like 20 times instead of 100. Unfortunately, season 2 was greenlit before season 1 aired, and season 3 was greenlit before season 2 aired, as we were all informed, in a way that was about as pretentious as you can be for announcing a next season by Adi himself. I think he should be fired. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But before we get into it, I do have some exclusive footage of Adi Shankar begging fans to like the show.
Just tell me. I'll fucking suck your dick, please. I'll do anything. You want me to eat shit? I'll eat your fucking shit.
I'm going to give a quick summary before we really get into the nitty gritty. For the positives, the one spot they really approved in the original lore was with Arius. Arius was a much more interesting character in this than he was in DMC 2. They do at least try to tone down Lady's unbearable personality components. And while the show never rises to the level of the games, they do attempt to give better characterization to Dante and Vergil while exploring their relationship. And there obviously seems to be a good amount of money behind the show. The animation still looks very nice. A lot of the action scenes have some decent style to them. Unfortunately, there are a lot more negatives than positives.
That's just a piece of crap.
Since we're stuck with Adi's stupid ass. Season 2 continues to make Dante a side character in what should be his show. Dante is never allowed to win an important fight in the entire season, which is incredibly frustrating to watch for the face of the franchise. This is one of the few shows where the music is actually so bad that it's distracting. You have early 2000s rock music drowning out almost every scene, and music in general used in wildly inappropriate ways throughout the season. Lady has plot armor out the ass. Power scaling continues to be an issue. We have amazingly cringe dialogue. Maybe Adi Shankar can team up with Yue Boll for season 3 and we can get even more horrendous dialogue.
And you are not going to be an actress. For all the hatred and fear of demons, actors have been a far worse scourge on this realm.
They butcher the lore in ways that make the story nonsensical, which is kind of a continuation from season 1. And this includes inserting memes into the show, along with the obviously inappropriate politics. I want to be clear right up front. It's a bad show on its own, but the fact that it's a miserable adaptation makes it increasingly frustrating because it might be the only Devil May Cry adaptation we get for like another decade. There'll be timestamps in the description for the different segments, but in order, I'm going to go through the positives, the story, the characters both in the show and how they compare to the originals, the inept use of music, and then how this show fares as an adaptation overall. So let's get into it. I'm going to start with the positives. The biggest is very clearly Arius. He's pretty much a nothing character in Devil May Cry 2, which is also the weakest entry of the franchise, certainly story-wise and possibly gameplay-wise as well. But the show takes the time to give him a backstory and clear motivations. I like the voice actor they use. He's a pretty competent villain overall. He's actually so competent that it's almost beyond belief to some degree because the coincidences that he relies on almost turn him into a fortune teller, but at least it's better than having a stupid villain. His backstory is pretty interesting, even if it's a bit generic with the whole drunk dad abusive thing. I thought the idea of living and being forced to reincarnate over and over again is a pretty good one. If I liked Adi Shankar, I'd be curious about whether or not he's a Seven Deadly Sins fan. Instead, he can suck it. The idea is still a really good one overall. If anything, it probably could have used some more exploration because the concept of seeing so much history and experiencing death and birth is super interesting. And the show just kind of does enough for it to function instead of delving a bit into the psychology of what that would do to somebody, which I think you could really have a lot of fun with. So even though it's Devil May Cry 2, which is far and away the weakest link in the franchise, since we don't talk about DMC Devil May Cry here, I still have to give the show props for actually improving on the source material. It's a rare occurrence in general and even more so these days. shows. Another positive is that the show seems to try to get away from the blatant America invading the Middle East metaphor that they started in season 1. Unfortunately, it still taints the entire season because of the world building element, and you have to wait for a good chunk of the season because there are certain characters who are tied to that part of the story before they get killed off. I think it's about as much as you can do to get away from it. They do the invasion into hell in episode 1 and say all the refugees that Lady tried to save are dead or tortured pretty quickly. So they move the story away from that plot element about as fast as they can to let the season focus on Lady and Vergil. Regardless of what your personal politics are, Devil May Cry isn't really the place for that. And even if you want to dabble with that element as like a matter of world building or politics, it should never be so in your face and handled that clumsily either way. Another positive is the attempt to course correct with Lady, which is nice because she was completely unbearable in the first season. And instead of saying fuck like 100 times, she only says it like 20, which is nice. So while it's still distracting and cringe because of how it's used, there was less of it. I'll get into it later in the video, but her character this season is still shit, which is a bummer considering how beloved she was just from Devil May Cry 3.
Did you kill him?
So what if I did?
Woo!
I love a fast woman.
And the last positive that I want to mention is the animation and the fight choreography overall. I think it's pretty solid, and you can tell they put quite a bit of money and effort into it, which is nice to see. While their fighting doesn't have the context of the games to pull from, so the fights themselves don't feel nearly as relevant or cool. On the most surface level, at least it looks cool, and they do take some moves from the games. I guess this is a fairly short list, but those are the positives for me. So let's get into the story, which is really where the meat of this video is going to be. You might have called it earlier in the video, but I'll be very clear right up front. This is the Vergil and Lady season. It is not Dante's show. He is a side character. The first season doesn't do it any favors, but the first episode of this season sets up a really flimsy foundation for the rest of the season because we have humans invading hell and essentially fighting on even footing with the demons. The very first thing you've done with your show is undermine all the power scaling and how impressive it is when there are humans who can actually fight demons. And it's a shame because if the humans had gone in and just gotten completely screwed up, you could still at least have the element of how important Dante really is to the world. It also really lowers the stakes of the fights between Dante and Vergil and how important they are for humanity. It also has a ripple effect of putting Lady on essentially even footing with high-level demons, even if that's only the case because of the tech she has, because it undermines how much effort and skill she has. But also, if she's only able to do this because of the tech she has, then this tech should be mass-produced for everyone. These are the kind of changes from the lore that really undercut the story, the stakes, the world building before your story has even had a chance to get off the ground. So let's just go in order with the episodes. Episode 1, we pick up right where season 1 left off with the invasion of hell. The military is a distraction for Lady to go in and steal one of the Arcana from Mundus' throne. And right away, the show starts breaking itself because Lady has this suit that makes her completely invisible to demons, and it's not really used with any efficacy again. It's kind of half-heartedly used in this episode and then just disappears. It's apparently capable of helping her sneak literally into Mundus' throne room, past high-level demons. They don't give it to the entire army. They don't give it to regular civilians. And the funny part is, they could have just had her do this without the invisibility at all because she hides anyway. We also see codename Kai, or Lucia, trying to get Vergil to come to Earth and realize that the Ouroboros group was framed for the murder of his mother. I'll go ahead and say right now, Lucia is completely wasted for the season. I'll save her specifics later for in the video, but she's simply a puppet of Arius this season and has a bunch of clones. In the game, when she finds out that she's a creation, she still chooses to do what's right and help Dante, which is so much more in line with the themes of the series of treating people as individuals who can choose to be good and do what's right, regardless of what they are. Anyway, this sets up this entire mystery / twist, which is that Mundus actually killed Dante and Vergil's parents and framed Ouroboros. It immediately changes Vergil's entire character for the rest of the season in ways that are worse. One of them being because this simply makes him seem dumb to me, because if he had literally questioned it at any point, he would have gotten to the truth. As the episode continues, the world building is just in shambles because Adi wants to beat us over the head with this America invading the Middle East allegory. So we get to see what is supposed to be propaganda news and anti-war protests. This is yet another example in recent memory of modern politics, meta politics, culture war nonsense being inserted into media when it makes absolutely no sense at all. We get it, Adi. We were all around in the 2000s, and many people, particularly young men of drafting and fighting age, were not supportive of the way that America handled the Middle East. I suspect, and maybe I'm just naive, that if literal hell opened up and demons poured out, America wouldn't be the only ones wanting to fight back. I think even the Chinas, Russias, and Irans of the world that all hate us would gladly join in a fight for the species. Maybe I'm too optimistic. And despite the fact that there are lunatics out there who would probably protest for demon rights, we all know that there's psychotic pieces of shit out there who advocate for the rights of people who murdered their own family. But despite the fact that these lunatics exist and they would probably protest for demon rights, I have a pretty firm belief that 99.9% of people would be okay with an invasion into hell to prevent demons from coming to Earth. Seems like a pretty blatant nod to Starship Troopers, which, how dare you? Aside from how annoying it is that he inserted his personal politics into the show, the equivocation of humans and demons eviscerates any chance of interesting or believable world building in this regard. So once we move on past the subtle political commentary, Lady gets back to Arius and Baines. She wants to quit because they used a military diversion to complete the mission to get to Mundus' throne. It's insane to me that she could be this pissed off, fight demons for this long, and also somehow be this naive, but whatever. As she does, she very eloquently accepts position as commander to try to do good in a bad organization.
I'll take the position, only so somebody else doesn't fuck it up.
We go to Vergil, who alternates between human and Nello/demon form, talking to Jester, and get maybe the moment of the show that makes me the angriest. He pulls out a chair to recreate the Vergil sitting on a chair meme because Adi thinks he's so fucking plugged in and cool. It makes no sense in this context, it isn't funny, and it makes me dislike his involvement in the show even more. The meme itself is funny in the Devil May Cry 5 context. There's a real life video of this chair sitting in a storm, so people were saying it's Vergil's chair as a joke. Dumb internet joke, whatever. And because of the meme, one of the mods exchanged the Califoth tree for the chair in the game, so you can have it in the game if you want to. Very niche little piece of humor for the DMC community. And now it's, I guess, anime canon in the demon world, which I refuse to call Makai. Moving on, Jester tells Vergil that Ouroboros is trying to bring back Argisax, the chaos who ruled hell before Mundus. Argisax is supposed to be the most evil version of Satan from our world's belief in hell, and Jester is supposed to be a saboteur working with the humans on Earth and nudges Vergil to talk to Mundus to try to get Vergil onto Earth so that both Sparta boys are on the same side with their blood and the amulets. This leads to one of the many overuses of super edgy metal music while demons are eating each other and eating humans in a cafeteria. A lot of the demons shit on Vergil for being a sapien. Just call them humans. Jesus Christ. And Beowulf, who's this monstrosity here, is reduced to just being a goon. There's not really a point to his presence in the season, frankly, other than a nod to the games. But he does indeed let Vergil through, because despite what the demons say, Vergil is strong. That little detail I actually like, despite the annoyance of the execution. But Vergil explains to Mundus that there are rumors he lost the Arcana, and now demons think they can challenge him. I think the idea of demons all vying for the top spot, waiting for an opportunity, sort of behaving like Sith, all that makes sense. But how is this communicated across the realm within like 5 minutes? How would anyone even know except for Mundus and Vergil, since I assume Mundus allows no one in his throne room? Why would they think that they can challenge him now when Vergil still cuts them all down in like 2 seconds? Why does Mundus think that the earth will fall to him when the army's just mowing dudes down without issue, using rocket launchers, grenades, whatever? I don't know. Who cares, I guess? This is a story. That's what they want to happen, so fuck it. Details don't matter. Some may say the devil is in the details. Vergil decides to go to Earth. Why Mundus and other demons like him can't go isn't quite clear to me. Luckily, human forces get to Vergil and surround him in like 2 seconds. They also use the suits to make themselves invisible here, but it doesn't really matter. And this is where the power scaling issues start, and they're a serious problem all throughout the show. Vergil gets hit by grappling guns with electricity and seems to struggle. Yet 2 episodes later, we see him walk straight at a room full of people with machine guns. No issue at all. The show really just lets characters do whatever they need to scene, which makes the fights really hard to take seriously throughout the season because you have no idea what's going to happen. It's purely up to the whims of the writers. We get a very cringe and very serious use of the song Bodies by Drowning Pool, and Vergil just cuts these dudes down. The show does want him to be on the human side later, by the way. Not a great start. We end episode 1 with Lady looking at a frozen Dante and regretting her betrayal. It looks like, based on his hair, season 2 is a few months after season 1. I really have no idea why she'd be feeling regret when their missions are going okay, and they've made a point to say that she has no idea that they're torturing the refugee demons that she saved. They also introduced this weird dynamic where Baines actually cares about Lady and then do nothing with it. It almost makes it seem like he's into her romantically in a weird way, but they show and say nothing in that regard. If they wanted to do a father figure type thing, that could definitely work, but they show and do nothing with it, other than a flashback where we see that he found her after she killed a demon and presumably raised her within the organization. Their relationship outside of this kind of exposition and flashbacks does nothing to indicate that they care about each other more than a boss and subordinate would. Very odd to add that in the 2nd season season and then also not really use it. We continue this thing with President Hopper, where he's just a George W. Bush caricature in order to maintain the Bush-Cheney parallels that don't make sense, because I'm assuming Adi never really had an idea beyond, I want to reference this thing that I didn't like. They also make a point of showing that the president is powerless to the corporation that Arias runs, which I'm assuming is more of Adi's belief slipping in. I could be on board with some kind of corporatism commentary, but not from him. They make it more evident in this scene, if it wasn't already, that Baines is working with Arias to complete his goal of invading Hell. And I'm kind of surprised that they didn't just change the name Ouroboros to like Halliburtonism. Why not just do everything on the nose at this point? Meanwhile, Vergil literally just walks into one of those refugee facilities and says, "I am that storm," which is mega cringe. It's a reference to Bury the Light, which is Vergil's theme song in DMC5, but Adi seems to understand none of the context of it, which we'll get into later in the music section of the video. And we waste what I would consider a fair amount of time when you're talking about an 8-episode, half-hour each season, watching Dante sit in therapy before he can go fight Vergil. I absolutely hate how insincere this handling of the backstory is. He just gives kind of a tongue-in-cheek explanation and explains his own backstory. They did a very similar thing with Lady in the first season. We've seen this in other recent movies and shows. In Masters of the Universe, they make fun of the name He-Man. In Supergirl, they make fun of the name Supergirl. It really gives me the vibe that they have disdain that they can't create the stories that they want to create, so they have to latch on to media that they feel is beneath them to tell their stories, which I hate on so many levels, and it's why we get so much shit TV like Halo. And as this bounces back and forth between him waking up and talking to the therapist literally says Lady Arkham was the one who drugged and betrayed and imprisoned you. And Dante just overlooks all this. He overlooks that her involvement got Enzo killed. He overlooks that she betrayed him multiple times last season. I don't think it's cute. I don't think it's funny. It makes him look like a completely incoherent character and an absolute fucking loser, especially when you know what the trajectory of their relationship is throughout this season. The only thing remotely enjoyable about this little scene is that his memory is like chibi animation, and he's goofy, so it's kind of funny. From his view, it's cute, but I still hate the insinuation that he's just a buffoon all the time, as opposed to a guy who's masking his pain and his past with humor. And he's had so many experiences that he doesn't really get worked up very often. So when he does, it's a big deal.
If that's your brother, what happened to V?
He returned to himself. Go home, Nero. This doesn't concern you.
Like hell. I lost my right arm because of him!
This is not your fight. I need to stop him, and that's all that matters.
I'm not gonna let you have all the fun, Dante!
You don't get it.
Let me guess. I'm dead weight? Well, you can
That's
shove
not
it up.
it, Nero.
What is it then?
He's your father!
What?
And they do a really nice job here while making it a little bit goofy, but I actually think it has a nice level of depth to it, where when Lady is recounting the events, it's kind of this shoujo overdramatic style where you can start to see that it's getting into her having feelings for him that aren't being reciprocated. And that's a nice choice. It's a funny way to communicate character with art, to mix up the styles in a very similar way that episode 6 last season had almost no dialogue and was probably the best episode of the season. I don't know if Adi has flashes of being the genius that he thinks he is all the time, if maybe he's got someone whispering in his ear so good ideas come through every once in a while, or what. But if this much thought was put into the whole show, it would be a fucking banger. We get another little stylized flashback here where she tells Dante about Vergil, and he obviously wants to be reunited with his brother, and the therapist immediately calls her a liar again. Doesn't seem super appropriate, but whatever. I feel like a lot of characters in shows lack complete professionalism now. Daredevil Born Again is a great example of this, where you have lawyers telling other lawyers to fuck off. And because the show doesn't really seem to know how to function, we get introduced to the genius plan this season where Lady wants to use Dante and Vergil's blood to open a portal to the demon world and drop an Arcana bomb into Makai to kill Mundus, and then close it immediately following all of season 1 where they tried to prevent that. Dante freaks out about Vergil working for Mundus, and if you actually care about continuity, Dante not knowing or understanding that he was half a demon in season 1 really undercuts all this to me. Like, he's supposed to have these super strong feelings about his blood and his lineage while also not knowing what it was. And later this season, we see him and his brother were told by their mom that they're essentially superpowered and need to keep it a secret. And also demons attack their house, so I'm not sure how he wouldn't have seen that to some extent, whatever. And Lady tells Dante that he can trust her this time, which just reinforces her idiocy.
Son of Sparta.
Yeah, fuck that.
especially because we know that she's lying to him again, and they want us to support their relationship later in the season. It completely makes Dante look like some kind of desperate loser trying to latch on to the first woman who shows him any attention. I wouldn't even call it affection. And that's just compounded by the fact that he's just risking his life for her and losing fights all season for the second season in a row. So after Dante meets Arias, he sees simulations where they're practicing fighting demons. Dante's heard of Arias but doesn't seem to care, and they try to win Dante over by showing him the results of Vergil cutting down the military personnel. Dante doesn't want to fight Vergil, but seems to think he can restore their relationship as brothers again. I mean, I guess that's fine. People aren't rational, but it's also a bit weird that he's thought he was dead for like his entire life, sees that he showed up to kill a bunch of humans, and just assumes that they can be buddies. We get some more nods to the games where they go make Ebony and Ivory, which are his guns, and he gets the Rebellion sword. It kind of annoys me that Dante doesn't enhance the bullets with his demon power. This is something that he has to learn from Vergil because he's not allowed to do anything that might resemble competence. And this is a super bizarre choice. Vergil just walks into what I guess is Jerry Springer and announces his presence to the world, which is very lucky for Dante. He doesn't have to find him. None of the reveal really makes any sense. Vergil talks about how demons can look like whatever and tells humans that the war isn't good versus evil and that Mundus just wants to be left alone. You would think that because he looks like a human, they would ask for proof. He shows some Polaroids of innocent demons being tortured by humans. He's literally showing them that he can look like a human, and we know that pictures can be faked. You can insinuate that these could be chopped up demons that look like humans. You could very easily assume this is a false flag type thing. So none of this really means anything, but it's also vital to the plot because Vergil stands up for tortured demons while we see this also going on in hell at the time, like Mundus tortures demons. It also makes Lady seem weirdly naive for the world that she's grown up in, because this is the first time she actually follows up on what happened to the demons that she rescued. I have no idea why she didn't do this before, but this is what leads to her complete turn on Arias and Baines. So they've kind of just railroaded her character for this plot point. This scene is vital for the entire season for pretty much every main character, and yet makes no sense. I have no idea who was in the writer's room and said, hey, why don't we just have him go on Maori and reveal that he's the demon? And everyone else just nodded along. Moving on, the show has just declared Vergil truthful. All the humans believe the demon. And because Vergil points at Ouroboros and Arias, the president is happy because Arias has to cut the feed. So he thinks he's finally got one over on Arias. I don't see how anything between the humans and demons would get him out of his situation with Arias and the corporations. But all of that is irrelevant anyway because Arias can see the future and this was just a part of his plan. This leads us into episode 3, which is a Vergil Dante fight. So obviously Dante loses. We get another music video to show Dante and Vergil as kids fighting. And there's this pretty frequent thing that we see now where they do a very lame setup of a move to then again reuse it later. And I think this fails like 90% of the time. Looking at Arya from Game of Thrones in particular, and they make a change here that really undermines Dante's capabilities once again, as if him always losing wasn't sufficient. They show Dante as the naturally gifted one, and Vergil is like the less capable but harder working one to compensate. Their mom also tells them to hold back with other kids around, which makes literally no sense if she doesn't tell them who their dad is. Again, in the context of Dante not knowing his origins in the first season, they do another trope here that I really don't like, but it's even more annoying because they don't actually do anything with it. Their mother tells Vergil that he's actually more special for being a hard worker as opposed to naturally gifted, and they do the thing where Dante overhears it as if he's less loved or he's insecure, and then this just goes nowhere. It's just kind of thrown in. Like maybe they put one bullet point down for an idea and then forgot it was in the script. The demons attack the house, and Vergil thinks his mom picked Dante over him, but he sees her dead body and not Dante's, so I'm not exactly sure what we're supposed to think that he thinks. I guess if you want to be charitable, you could think that she tried to save Dante and they both died. But either way, he gets captured by the demons and tortured for being the son of Sparta. And once again, the choice to not have them know their origins makes the story weird. Dante didn't know anything about his dad, didn't know that he wasn't fully human, despite all the things that he could do and had superpowers. Vergil sees the demons attack their house as a young boy and doesn't really have a reaction beyond treating them as home invaders. It's all these little changes that add up to make the story just weird and undermine world building when you didn't really need to. And if you've seen a TV show ever, this is very obviously the thing where Mundus set Vergil up to get captured and tortured so that he could be broken down and then groomed and built back up into one of Mundus's goons. And this slight change really alters Vergil's entire purpose and arc. And I think Adi doesn't understand the ripple effect that this has throughout the series for all the characters as he tries to use Wikipedia to pretend that he's a hardcore fan. Mundus gives the Yamato to Vergil, which of course Sparta does in the actual supernatural lore. He also teaches Vergil how to use his demon/Nello form, which was originally forced on him to enslave him in Devil May Cry 1. Obviously, that's a lot more tragic than it just being kind of a half-assed power-up. As we come back to the present, Vergil and Dante are about to fight. Lady and her squad are in charge of capturing them both and using their magic anti-demon bullets that can actually kill them. And I'll admit, even Adi can't make Vergil completely uncool. We see a sniper set up, aiming at Vergil, looking for a chance to shoot at him, and we see Vergil stare back at him because he knows he's there, even though he's super far away on a rooftop. And there's a decision here that's not necessarily bad or wrong, but I have no idea why this fight was staged at the Washington Monument. They could have literally had them fight anywhere, and they had them fight in a big flat open pool. It drives me crazy when shows don't make use of the environment for their epic fights, especially in Devil May Cry where you have super beings, it's animated, you can do pretty much anything you want if you set it up correctly, and this is what they chose. Also, the idea of evacuating all of Washington, D.C. for this is hilarious, especially in what seems to be the time frame. If you've ever been to D.C., it's an absolute nightmare to get around. I couldn't even imagine what it would be like to try to evacuate it. And also just thematically, it seems like you could have picked something more appropriate. You could have made up a place or a city or a building, really anything you want. There are no limits here except for your imagination. I mean, even something just as simple as a monument of any deceptive person in history, since they're both being lied to by people that are presumably close to them and on their side, or just something more relevant. Lincoln is recognizable, I guess, but people often associate him with freeing slaves, which doesn't really seem to apply here, unless we're going to say that the demons are slaves in their world and we're going to liberate them, which would be pretty antithetical to the rest of the show and its view on us invading hell. They talk a bit before the fight gets going, and Vergil says that Mundus told Sparta to put the barrier between the realms and he was always loyal to him, and the show confirms this later on. This is a really bizarre decision, and then you have to start asking questions like, why did the demon realm never just take the earth realm? Vergil's very condescending here and derides Dante for not questioning his sources, while literally not questioning his sources, and it makes him kind of annoying throughout the season instead of cool, because in the games he's cool but wrong. He at least seems smart, but him being wrong about everything in this season just makes him annoying because he's being smug and he's also incorrect. And while this fight's going on, we're bouncing back and forth between the command room and the fight, and Kai tells Lady that she has a schoolgirl crush on Dante, and it feels to me like we're just getting exposition here because they want the relationship that we get soon between Dante and Lady, but they didn't do anything in the first season to earn it and actually went very far against it. So now they use lazy exposition to just be like, well, this is how she feels. Eventually, after they start tearing down some buildings, Vergil transforms to get closer to the sniper, and Dante transforms to go after him, and they fly into the Ouroboros building. The fight's generally okay, except for the annoying music the entire time. They mainly just kind of hack at each other. This would have been the time to break out some of the moves from the games. Of course, because the way this show has been set up, they can't use any of the other weapons, which could have been fun, so they are just sort of limited to their blades. This is where Vergil's motivations become conflicting and kind of confused. Dante talks about how Mundus rules with fear and blood. Vergil just says, well, I know you are, but what am I? And that humans do as well. And this is where Adi Shankar's dumbass politics being so overt in the show really bite it in the ass. They're talking about ruling with fear and blood in America. Maybe the show should have given itself the freedom to be in another part of the world that is actually tyrannical. Not that they would ever have the balls to do that. America is not perfect, obviously. You can't build a perfect society with hundreds of millions of imperfect beings. But to pretend this is the same thing when Mundus literally has them in the cafeteria eating each other, and Vergil's job as an enforcer was killing anyone who questioned him. But this show tries to equivocate Mundus literally having demons eat each other, enslaving them. He had his own camps. Vergil's job as an enforcer was to kill anyone who questioned him, and the show thinks this is the same. It's absolutely laughable to think these two are the same thing. I mean, maybe they should have had this fight in like North Korea. And this is all happening while Vergil's giving a might makes right speech, by the way. This show has no idea what it wants to say. It doesn't know what it wants its characters to say. And then Vergil launches into a woe is me. Vergil's mad that their mom picked Dante over him. The shifting of the lore once again confuses the story. He had no clue what happened to Dante. He was by himself. He only saw his mom dead. His mother had no chance to save him, obviously. He knows that she was a human. His motive being vaguely power, I guess, is still the same, but all the context around it makes him way less interesting. I'll get more into that in the adaptation section. This is also the main scene that I was referring to when I was talking about the show having Dante overhear their mother call Vergil special and look jealous. It doesn't really make any sense as a choice. Why wouldn't you reverse those roles and make Dante seem like the obvious favorite so that this would have some impact, even if it's not a ton? The sniper, who's somehow still alive, has a shot at Vergil, but only if it goes through Dante. This causes Lady to point her gun at Arius, and Kai draws her sword on Lady. Meanwhile, Vergil has time to fuck up Dante and cut the bullet in half before it gets there. Again, the power scaling being whatever it needs for the show. Vergil shoots the sniper with Dante's gun, and the sniper just explodes because he actually charged it up with demon power. So of course Dante can't even learn to shoot his own guns. Vergil using a gun I hate. He does have long range attacks, but he's weirdly snooty about guns being barbaric, and he's kind of a snob because he views his power to be what he can manifest on his own without relying on tools. Again, just one of those little details that Adi doesn't seem to understand that waters down the character and makes him more generic. Dante is super pissed off, as if the guy didn't just try to kill them both, and Vergil points out that Dante's killed a bunch of Macayans just because he got paid to, and Dante has nothing to say to this because he's not really a character, he's just the supporter for the Vergil and Lady show. And here's where we get maybe the most inappropriate use of Devil May Cry music this season. They use Bury the Light here. Great song, and its context in Devil May Cry 5 makes it awesome. It gets thrown in here very haphazardly in a way that doesn't really make any sense. Again, pats on the back for Adi because it's a reference. I'll get more into that in the music section, but the bullet point summary is that the song is an affirmation of Vergil's will to surpass any humanity for power. Completely fucking irrelevant to this scene. Dante finally gets the edge until Vergil pulls the sword into him and then runs Dante through the chest. If Polymarket existed in this world, you should always just bet against Dante. Lady has surprised Pikachu face as she realizes that they've been betrayed. Vergil just uses the codes that get him access to where Arius and Lady are. And what I think is a very out of character thing for her, she stays behind while her men go into the hall, and she's like the last line of defense for the Arcana. Arius gives a speech about people who aren't innovative and leech off others to the last dollar because he's an artist. Funny considering he's running a mega corporation. Whatever. He says chaos is needed for progress or evolution. I don't know if the show meant to be based as shit here, but I think it accidentally is. He prattles on about how you can't bend the system to make dramatic changes, you have to destroy it, and is openly calling for a revolution. They're having the villain of the show be a mouthpiece for a revolution that will kill billions to increase his own power. Generally speaking, having your villain say this functions as a criticism of the reality of overthrowing a society and what it actually costs with the hope of improvement that won't ever actually manifest. Unironically, way to go, Adi here. During their little chit chat, Vergil walks toward a bunch of guys with machine guns, just cutting the bullets down and letting them all flee. This would be a really interesting thing if he were actually going on an arc to become sympathetic to humans and valued life. And while he does save a human character later, this arc never really develops or goes anywhere. It just sort of seems like he's making choices willy-nilly based on his mood, which a chaotic villain could be super interesting, but that's not how the show portrays him. They portray him as calculated, but then he makes peculiar decisions throughout the season. And like pretty much every character in this show, he reverts to his beginning of the season place with a very slight change at the end of the season regarding who he hates. Arius criticizes Lady as predictable because she abides by rules, and Vergil calls Lady Dante's pet and says her reputation precedes her, but he understands her better than Dante because she fights for a cause and is willing to die. Another place where you could have had a pretty interesting dynamic if it had gone somewhere beyond this one conversation, but instead Vergil just comes out and says the president sold them out. Doesn't seem like the brightest move to give up his mold just in case, but whatever. And the president wanted a peace deal with demons and hell. This is another scene where it's like, how far are you supposed to buy into their metaphor that the president is wanting to make a peace deal with demons and hell? And obviously that sounds absurd, but if the demons and hell are symbolic of the Middle East, what did the show mean by that? Lady stands down and tells Arius to figure it out. She's suddenly a simp for Dante. She's all in for Dante's D. Vergil has a line here that actually did make me laugh.
You and your brother might be equal parts human, but he's twice the man that you are.
Be sure to tell him that as you're peeling him off the wallpaper.
So Lady got promoted and quit her job in a 2-episode span, but as she's leaving, when Baines calls her Mary, she just says, "Who's Mary?" Vergil lets Arius know that his head was part of the deal with the president, and Vergil makes it clear to him that he blames him for his mother's death. All this is kind of incoherent. Arius tells Vergil he didn't kill their mom, but had to make Vergil believe that he did to lure Vergil to him, but we saw that Mundus did that, and we know that Mundus and Argisax/Arius are enemies, but they're all trying to get Vergil to the same place, which is convenient for the show, I guess. Arius stops Vergil's attack with his demon power and explains that it was a trap, as if that wasn't apparent already. And this is where I find it hard to believe that Arius has so much foresight. This entire season literally relies on it all happening within one day, or Arius has to wait over a century for another chance because it has to line up with some special eclipse. Arius says that he knew the president would betray him, but this also relies on Vergil falling for it. What if Dante had won the fight? Unlikely he just hands Vergil over to Arius. What if Vergil didn't want to come himself to Earth due to Jester's machinations, or Mundus had simply said, no, we don't need to? What if Lady had failed to get the Arcana, which was reliant on her surviving Mundus abandoning the throne at the exact time of the infiltration? Even if he had a hand in all these events, it still requires massive groups of people to all behave 100% exactly as expected and in time for him to use the Arcana's power. So to end the episode, Arius uses the Arcane and Baines runs. Arius has the Sword of Sparta, which requires the jewels from Dante and Vergil to use. Chugging right along to episode 4, we start off with a flashback of Vergil's training with Mundus. I really hate how this takes away Vergil's agency to walk his own path, and Mundus also gives Vergil his blue jacket, so I guess Dante coincidentally picked the same one but red, thank God. And we get a very out of context use of Devils Don't Cry from Mundus during this flashback, just another butchering of the original, and once again used in a lesser fashion. Back to Vergil and Arius' duel. Arius points out during their fight that he had a traitor among Mundus men, but Vergil was very conveniently never allowed to interrogate anyone. The fight's pretty solid, but it does seem like Arius could have just used his magic to grab him whenever, so Vergil kind of gets his ass beat. Lady frees Dante and confesses the truth about their plan, and the White Rabbit being a false flag operative so that they could invade Hell. Incredibly subtle, not sure what the show is trying to say here. She brings up the executed refugee demons, and he wants her help to get Vergil back, and she's mad when Vergil just tried to kill Dante, but she helps anyway, I guess out of guilt, because she's betrayed him like 6 times in fucking 12 episodes or whatever we're at. Vergil isn't convinced that Arius can bring Argisax back because he's a human, but they're able to steal Vergil's blood, and this is where we get the 22-hour countdown for the latter half of the season. Arius says that chaos is freedom, and I really wish that this aspect of the show had been explored more, as opposed to spending our time with Middle East allegories, because this could be a really interesting debate about how many people are oppressed in a stable society, how many live up to their potential. Would chaos sometimes be a benefit? Obviously the answer is no, but it would be nice if the show actually had the discussion instead of just kind of having him ranting and raving with the audience understanding that he's evil. And I don't want to get way off in the weeds here, but there's a book called Why Nations Fail. It talks about how too much government or a toothless government oppresses people, because if the government can't enforce the laws, that's where you get your roving gangs of bandits, you get a bunch of warlords vying for power. It is chaos in a sense. And then obviously we've seen the top-down tyranny all throughout the 20th century and really all of history, although obviously logistics of that have changed. It's still been demonstrated for thousands of years. But I think that's a really interesting area the show could have touched on instead of choosing to mess around with interpersonal drama that gets reset at the end of the season. Dante and Lady show up. He's able to shoot Arius and free Vergil. And this is one of the scenes that I think feels like it could be a Dante scene.
Hey, Mr. Magic Man. Been meaning to tell ya. You got a little something. Right here.
Arius loses an arm to Vergil's sword, but then just teleports away. Kind of feels like he could have done that whenever, but I guess the arm thing doesn't matter anyway for more than like 10 minutes, so who cares? Vergil uses Yamato to chase him, and Dante and Lady tag along. Arius gets a new arm right away, which is a bit frustrating because it makes it very inconsequential. As much as I criticized the Maul Shadow Lord show, at least when it introduced that leg issue at the beginning of the season, it was a lingering thing throughout the entire season in hindering him. This one is like, oh, we have magic demon technology, lose an arm, who cares? Just need 5 minutes. And this is where we start to get a bit of his backstory with his drunk, abusive dad. Fine. Obviously, you want to have a messed up character to be your villain, so there's some semblance of being a product of his environment. And this is where we get the little info dump from Vergil. He explains that in 22 hours, Argisax will take over both realms. I do find it amusing here that Vergil calls the lie to Lady to get her to get the 4th Arcana a clever lie, when it feels like a pretty obvious one, that there just happens to be some secret demon killing weapon that the king keeps right by his side. I guess you could believe that he would want to keep it close, but Lady has just been kind of naive and fooled this entire season. It just doesn't feel like it jives with her season 1 character, who obviously hated Dante so much he was willing to literally stab him in the back and try to blow his head off. This is one of those things where it feels like they didn't leave themselves enough time or room to have an actual solution, because Dante and Lady don't believe Vergil, and then he explains the situation and then they just believe him.
Arius means to use them to raise the god of chaos, Argisax.
Is that more Mundus propaganda?
A few moments later.
And you're saying Arius wants to bring him back?
Yes.
Lady, once again, was withholding information from Dante, tells him about the lie they were trying to get the rift open. Doesn't really impact anything. He's mad for a minute and then they just move on. Really bizarre to put this scene here when in about 20 minutes this episode is going to end with them kissing. Whatever. Dante is just a fucking simp at this point. Vergil keeps reiterating to Dante that Sparta didn't actually make the barrier to protect humans. He made it to keep Hell pure from contaminants. And Dante points out that he had kids with their mom, and Vergil says it was an accident and she was nothing more than essentially either a prostitute or a concubine storyline. It's not clear, but Sparta was a demon racist supremacist. I absolutely hate this change in the show. I don't understand the purpose of it other than to create more daddy issues as if they didn't already have enough with a demon father, but fine. It's a very lame version of the original lore, and it makes Sparta actually worse in this case because as far as the show is concerned, demons are kind of just dick humans. It seems like a lot of them are okay, and the powerful ones are kind of assholes. But in the original, where demons were thought to be 100% evil, when you had one do the right thing, it was special. So all of that is just lost. This is a really weird bit of dialogue here because Vergil already knows about the eclipse. That's why he gave the 22-hour timeline. But then Lady is the one explaining everything as if she just happened to know there would be an eclipse tomorrow. Very weird little factoid to know. They call it a hybrid solar eclipse. In the show, they say it happens every century and a half, but it's an actual thing that happens more on an average of like every 14 years. I don't know why they didn't just use the actual timeline, because if they win the battle here, it kind of makes it seem like they'll be saved for the rest of their lives and not have to worry about it. And it also makes Arius' plans way more of a coincidence if he has to wait another 150 years to try again, as opposed to every 14 years, which obviously isn't imminent, but on the time scale of demons and everything, it is. Distorting the gaps between this event makes the whole story feels like it relies a lot more on coincidental timing. We get little Arius flashbacks spattered throughout this episode. They don't really add a ton. He had a shit childhood. We knew it from the first flashback. Keep moving it. The president wants to make a peace deal with the demons, but Bane shows up and wants to arrest him. I don't really know how he can do that, but why bother thinking about anything? The president tells them about the White Rabbit betrayal, and a blonde guy shoots by accident because he's scared, and the president dies. This blonde guy doesn't really have any point beyond plot convenience because he shows up again later to help Lady get free. So he's just kind of thrown in there. They do try to give him like a coward to courage type mini arc, but he gets like 30 seconds of screen time and only when it's absolutely vital to helping out the main characters. Lady's asking Vergil questions about the Arcana, and Vergil says that it can't be destroyed in hell. They literally just walk into Arius' base, and Dante shoots the controls so the door opens. As they're walking into the base, Dante finds a box of coins and just keeps one for seemingly no reason other than the plot knows that he's going to need it later. Obviously done worse than in DMC 2, which is not a good thing. Because for it to work in this show, you have to assume that he just keeps a box of what looks like the medaglia in his base to the point where he wouldn't recognize it. Where the game seems to function more as he hadn't seen it before, so when Dante gives him his two-headed coin, how would he know the difference? As they're going in, Lady touches a weird mirror that shows trauma shit, her dad eating her mom, and Dante saves her from walking into the Trismagia, or like one of your oracles of hell. It isn't actually a mirror. And you find out that their revelations are always accurate, which is a pretty neat little thing that doesn't really get explored again. It's used later as a way to put Vergil on pause, but that's kind of the extent of it. We get more Arius being abused as a kid until we get the reveal that he finally snapped and killed his own dad. We see it took 28 lifetimes for Arius to get the full Arcana. Again, a ton of potential here. I really would have dug these flashbacks of him being an abused kid, being cut down to like 1, and then seeing some of his different lifetimes. Vergil, Dante, and Lady finally get to the Arcana, and Kai and her clone show up. Dante tries to sweet talk her, but she just tosses him. We then see a bunch of failed experiments attack them, and this is a very uninteresting fight. There's nothing super compelling. It's just kind of them mowing down vague looking monsters. There's no real stakes. You know they're going to get hurt by these things. They don't even have like a big boss one. It's really just to buy time for Arius to show up. And we get a little bit of like Marvel quippy shit here. Not a ton to glean. It really just feels like they were like, well, Netflix needs the episode to be 30 minutes, so let's just throw in some monsters for a couple. Eventually, Vergil tries to teleport to grab one of the Arcana away so that Arius can't fully power up, but one of the clones knocks him off the path, of course onto a bridge, and then Dante jumps through his gate right after him, and there's not a chance in Makai he could have swapped the coins, but a flashback would just say otherwise. So our Lord Adi says, praise be to Adi. Very unsurprisingly, Vergil cuts a gate open and sends Lady and Dante away. He could have literally sent them anywhere, but he sends them like a couple hours away, just so they can't hide for the 22 hours necessary and the show can have some kind of tension. They also show Vergil looking exhausted, so not even clear to me why he sent the help away. If he knew that Dante actually had the medaglia and didn't send him further, then he's stupid. If he didn't know that Dante had it and wanted to fight on his own, then he's stupid. So lose-lose. Arius whips Vergil's ass and sends him away to the Trismagia so that he can't interfere with the plot for an episode. Evanescence comes on. Arius realizes what Dante did, and Lady nuts in her armor. She's mad that she missed her shot at redemption, but Dante smiles. Here's where they show the flashback that did 100% not happen this way, but Dante says jackpot, and that's the thing he says is he eats pizza, so so fuck it, who cares? Lady shoves her tongue down Dante's throat. Half the shippers cry, half of them pause the TV, and it's just gooning time for all of them, I'm sure. That's the end of episode 4. I don't want to derail the video, but I at least want to talk a bit about the romance of Dante and Lady. In the games, Dante is romanceless, and obviously because it's a video game, you know who your audience is. It's teenage boys predominantly, so they all pick their favorite girls. I think the people who pick Trish when she looks just like his mom need to have the Oedipus smacked out of them. Lady always made the most sense to me if they were going to include it, just because of the nature of her arc and where she goes from hating demons to accepting Dante. You have similarities shared between the two of their tragic backgrounds, and it's always just felt to me like they've had good chemistry in the games. Plus, if you're going to pick a model who's already attractive and make her super attractive in Devil May Cry 5, it feels like common sense to me. Obviously, Trish's model is super attractive too, but the whole identical to the mom thing I think is just weird. And then maybe people have been watching a little bit too much of a stepmom in the washing machine type situation. Maybe should go outside for a bit. Now, as far as the show goes, this arc is completely unearned. They don't do nearly enough to repair the damage done between the two up to this point, and they're so chicken shit they just undo it at the end of the season anyway. This really seemed like one of those things they kind of just threw in to try to raise the stakes and appease the shippers. They also didn't want to piss off the other people who had whatever other ship in mind. So by resetting it, it seems like they want to eat their cake and have it too. Moving on to episode 5, we get a style of flashback that I honestly hate. First of all, because it's yet another waste of Keith David, who's fucking awesome. They give us a flashback. Dante meets a super powerful guy who calls himself a sorcerer for a job named Lucan with a pet tiger. And another thing that makes the show worse, this dude literally talks about the demon realm well before season 1, and Dante was still so dumb that he didn't get it. It's just unbelievable how careless they are with their dialogue. The entire purpose of the flashback, and the reason I hate these type of things, is because it's to very plot conveniently introduce a character for a specific purpose for this episode. It's just a super lazy way to say that, oh, we didn't really have the season planned out, so we didn't do any foreshadowing. Lucan also knew Sparta apparently, which I don't really even understand, but let's just get Keith David in some good shit again. I think the dude's in his 70s now. If nothing else, bring him back when they do campaign Evolveder for Halo 2 and he can be the Arbiter again, because I cannot imagine anyone else as the Arbiter. And in very ladylike fashion, unintended, she's mad that she kissed Dante and shoves him and says it was an accident. And then of course, because God forbid there be any kind of sincerity or anything between these two, she tells Dante not to worry about Vergil because Vergil's just like Dante but not an idiot. It's exhausting. She is correct though. She wants to get as far away as possible from Arius to keep him from getting the Arcana. And Dante, for one of the only times in the show, seems like he might have a functional IQ and says that it doesn't matter how far away they get because Arius can teleport, but maybe he knows a guy that can destroy it. And they very conveniently get a motorcycle from the nice truck driver who they just wrecked his truck because Vergil teleported them very close to Lucan, right in front of a truck that had other vehicles on it, so it didn't matter that Dante crashed it. Vergil is indeed the perfect storm that is approaching with that level of planning. Lucan calls Dante son of Sparta and then gives some bullshit sophistry to explain why he didn't tell Dante before, and I actually agree with Lady.
Fuck this. He can't help us. He's just an asshole who talks in vague bullshit.
And Lady wants to leave, but Lucan says he knows about Lady's mom as well as the Arcana. I don't know who this guy is or why he's so powerful. Kind of just seems like a walking deity. He creates a bunch of copies of the Arcana and sends them everywhere so that Arius doesn't find them right away. Very convenient skill set. And he also knows exactly about Argisax and the Hybrid Eclipse. He keeps spewing annoying shit about revenge, but he explains that the demon and human realms were once the same realm and lived in peace until Argisax swallowed people from the ancient worlds. Doesn't really change a ton, I guess, but I'm sure it was done to get people to infer the notion of a common ancestor and help assist with sympathizing with the good demons. Lucan says he needs about 8 hours to destroy the Medaglia, and we get introduced to his granddaughter, Maddie, or Matilda if you prefer. This scene perfectly encompasses Adi's lack of restraint with weird self-insert horseshit.
And you are not going to be an actress. For all the hatred and fear of demons, actors have been a far worse scourge on this realm.
Just write the fucking show and don't introduce a little girl MacGuffin. So Dante and Lady had to leave Lucan alone and make sure that he's not disturbed. I hate this entire scene. We get a montage to Avril Lavigne's Skater Boy of Dante and Lady playing with Maddie. Sort of just filler, but it does serve as a chance to get some Adi references in, where we see one of Lady's outfits from the games. But this is another confusing song choice. Outside of being upbeat, it's kind of about a bad boy in a relationship, but they include a little girl in this scene instead of just having some self-restraint and making this a more serious scene to set up them being intimate, whatever. And we get a conversation between Lady and Dante about Vergil, where she talks about how she sympathizes with him because she was also manipulated to working for someone evil, obviously unintentionally. Again, something else that could be interesting. It almost seems like the show wants to do an enemies to lovers thing with Lady and Vergil instead. And at this point, if Vergil cucked Dante, would anybody be surprised? Oh my God. And then we do get a slightly more serious scene before they fuck, where Lady explains to the audience and Dante that his humor is just a mask for how serious he is. I don't know if Netflix thinks that this is your second screen or that you're stupid. Very frustrating to listen to them just explain things that we already know. But she goes on to talk about how the pain fuels her and Dante tries to ignore it. He kind of pities her that she's only motivated by pain. And she says, what else is there? So he says, my D, and they fuck. And now she's a complex character because not only is she fighting for revenge, she's fighting for Dante's cock. Woo! Depth. The show does the slow music and portrays this as a very emotional moment, but because everything leading up to this makes them one of the most toxic on-screen relationships, and they've done absolutely nothing to set it up or earn it, along with the fact that they have them break up at the end of the season anyway, it just comes across as a bit horny and weird. Arius finds them with an hour left before the Arcana is destroyed, and their great plan to guard Lucan with the entire world on the line was to play dress up, fuck, and go to bed. Not even really an all-nighter, it's like an 8-hour, like half a night shift. Anyway, the clones swarm the house and attack the tiger. Maddie walks right into a clone, but Dante gets there just in the nick of time. I'll give the show credit for at least this much. Maddie is actually scared and crying, unlike that piece of shit little girl in the Punisher special. The bar has gotten so low for TV, it's in Mackay at this point.
This is for you.
Lady and Dante try to hold them off. The clones activate, I guess, their devil trigger based on how it works in this show and turn into these flying harpy things. Lady blows up the entryway to buy him a minute, but Dante says that he can't control his devil trigger because why would he be good at anything ever in the Devil May Cry show? Arius, to no one out loud, declares that this is exciting to try to bully the audience into agreement. The action in the scene is fine overall. At least they introduced a wrinkle with the flying elements. A fairly bold move for this show's standards where they actually let Lady get fucked up too. And it's not just Dante, although of course that means they introduce massive plot armor, but whatever. And Dante finally transforms when they pile up on him because he needs to get the lady. I mean, that man was simping hard after she had stabbed him in the back and tried to blow his head off, so you know he's gonna go hard after he's gotten some from her. Anyway, a clone swoops in and flies Lady like 1,000 feet into the air, and this is the part where you just don't give a shit anymore because she gets shredded up there, she's bleeding all over the place, and then dropped and lands on a statue. She should be an F-word shaped splat. And Dante, in his fit of rage, believing the lady is dead, uses his power to fly out toward the cloud of clones, completely screwing Lucan and Maddie over, because if there's a mistake to be made in this show, you can bet your ass it will be Dante that makes it. Because if it's not Dante himself being held captive, it needs to be his stupidity that leads someone else, in this case Maddie, to be a hostage. And they do a thing that I hate, I feel like is becoming very common in TV right now, where we're getting flashbacks to something that he's upset about from like 30 seconds ago. I guess they just assume no one's watching. With Maddie hostage, Dante powers down, Lucan stops trying to destroy the Arcana, and Arius has a line here that amused me.
At last we meet. I'd say I wish it was under better circumstances, but these are actually quite good ones for me.
But obviously, they make a trade. Lucan gives the Arcana coin to Arius and then gets cut in half in exchange for Maddie's life, which then Arius immediately transports Maddie to Tismagia, where she would die in no time if not for plot convenience. And we get the jillionth poor attempt at a deal with a devil in media. And as we go into episode 6, we get yet another example of a situation that should make you think, oh, is this character dead? Are they seriously hurt? And in less than 10 seconds, we go straight to plot armor. Bane says that Arius' technology is a miracle, and Lady is essentially good to go in like 2 minutes after she should already be dead. And then we get another type of flashback that I hate here, which I feel like is sort of the emotionally manipulative flashback, where they try to inject a connection backwards that hasn't really been present in the whole show because they're about to kill a character. Demon Slayer, I would say, is like infamous for this, where you see these demons killing all kinds of fucking people, and then as they're dying, you get a flashback to some sob story to try to make you feel bad for them instead of of like fuck them, which is how you should feel. This flashback is 9 years prior. It's from the perspective of Baines, where he's finding Lady as a kid. She's a young lady messing up a big demon, and then Baines recruits her to hunt demons. This is just pure horse shit to try to make you feel like they had some father-daughter relationship right before they killed Baines off, when that shit has not existed in the 13 episodes leading up to this one. So we're less than an hour away from the eclipse. There was 22 hours until the eclipse when Dante stole the coin, then however long it took for them to get to Lucan's, plus 7 hours, plus the fight. So Lady should be dead, and instead was healed in like 8 or 9 hours. Wonderful plot armor. Lady wants to stop the Arcana opening everything, and Baines is a zealot, even though his views aren't really coherent or interesting. Baines is the perfect character that encapsulates all of my frustration with Adi Shankar in this show, because Baines is his own character. He can do whatever he wants with him, and he chooses to make him this kind of shallow parody of maybe Dick Cheney, and that's the end of it. There's no more thought, there's no more intrigue. You get an oh shit, we don't actually have a character flashback, we need to kill this dude off after almost 2 seasons. I think he could have been a pretty interesting character if we had actually explored some of his views and they weren't so cartoonish or incoherent, but instead they chose to give him all kinds of screen time season 1, less so in season 2, but still a fair amount, and all they've done is have him be a retarded zealot. Lady tries to explain to him that Arius wants to resurrect Satan, not kill him, and Baines just doesn't care. The scared guy who shot first to get the president killed is the one driving here because he still has a job somehow, and even if he had a job, why would Baines keep him around himself when you can see how dangerous he is if there's a serious situation? Great job there. Dante wakes up strapped down and he wants Lady. Arius says what the entire audience thinks, which is that he's an idiot for being with Lady when she keeps betraying him and trying to kill him. Arius tells Dante that he sent Vergil to the Trismagia, and thank Christ for the coincidence of all coincidences. Vergil wakes up like 5 feet from Maddie and sees a demon taunting her, where they just happen to have taken Dante's locket that he happened to give Maddie, and Vergil happened to see so that he can decide to save her and kick their asses. Arius is trying to recruit Dante and Vergil and puts Dante in this mind torture control thing, and this lets both Dante and us see a flashback of Argisax's reign and Mundus uprising to kill him, and the 4 Arcana teleported to Earth when he died. We see Arius, who I guess is supposed to be maybe a Da Vinci-esque figure, talks to Argisax through it, and this gives him the ability to resurrect as soon as he dies and keep his memories. I mentioned this before, but this is an element that I think could have really been explored in the psychology of what this does to someone, how he really got to where he is now. Was he always kind of bad? Did the Arcana make him bad? Did seeing humanity for so long turn him bad? Did his experiences turn him worse? We already know that he was abused as a kid in his first life. 7 Deadly Sins, while it has problems with the end, does a ton with a similar premise, and it's emotionally super compelling because it's used as a form of torture where it's forced on 2 characters in the show. And if they hadn't switched animation studios in the last 2 seasons, I'd probably recommend it. First 3 are still a lot of fun, but anyway, they just kind of montage it. It's functional, but I think we really could have enjoyed our time with a concept like this as opposed to our time with Baines being an idiot zealot or Hopper just being George Bush but with demons. I'm also kind of surprised that he can't detect the other Arcana with some kind of power, because it seems like he's just sort of manually looking, but maybe that's due to limitations in technology. I don't know. Obviously, it's all kind of its own vague magic system, so it's whatever. He reveals that he's 672. He explains this as the reason that he became frustrated with systems and their constraints on his brilliance, and then he goes through the list of historical systems that we've seen in humanity. He says the Argisax gave him the one piece of advice that he needed centuries ago: burn it all and embrace the flames. I actually think that works pretty well as his backstory and his character, but it's always hard not to wonder what if with a really neat concept like that. Back in the Trismagia, Maddie tells Vergil about Dante. More demons approach Vergil, like he didn't just punch 2 dudes to death. And edgelord music aside, ideally they finally use the environment some with a sort of MC Escher style of stairs and gravity to have Vergil attack from all directions around the room. And Maddie is a hostage for the second time in like 20 minutes of screen time between the 2 episodes. Vergil, of course, says that he doesn't care about the girl, but the distraction allows for her to bite the dude's hand, and Vergil flies in, grabs his sword, and kills the dude. He can't open gates with his sword from here, and the thug guy tells Vergil that Arius sends people here who he needs gone, but it isn't convenient to kill. This feels really nonsensical. If people are just disappearing forever, they're just as good as if they're dead, so the problem is the same. It actually makes more sense for Vergil specifically, just because of the value of his blood, and he would obviously be very difficult to imprison, but there being just mobs of demons here, or people, or whatever they even are, just doesn't make any sense. Just an excuse to have Vergil beat up on some losers and fill some screen time. And also, if Arius wanted these people alive, what about them just sitting around killing each other? What about the dozen or whatever that Vergil just killed? No problem for Arius, I guess. Very fortunate. Anyway, they're on their way to fight the Trismagia, which the thug dude told them had turned people here into zombies. Again, same thing as dead, whatever.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next product.
We go back to Lady and Baines, where she's bitching at him for killing kids and families, and he just rambles about faith. Would be nice to know what his faith is beyond God declares it. Any kind of rationale, any kind of reason for his faith, any value in the faith. Just say God a bunch, fuck it. He's such a cartoonish, one-note character who ends up just being a blot on the show and a waste of screen time. The more important thing here, very convenient right before he dies, is that he reveals to Lady that her father is alive and helping them against Mundus. And Baines says that he's earned his redemption, so can Lady. And Lady says that Baines and Jester are the same. And she goes off about Baines and what a piece of shit he is. And this would all hit a lot harder between her and Baines if they had had any relationship at all beyond general and soldier or captain and soldier or whatever, boss and subordinate. It would also probably work better if he wasn't generally right, even if his reasoning is atrocious and nonsensical. It's kind of why he's frustrating, because his goal of destroying hell, I think, is correct, but the show just views him as so evil and so stupid that it just doesn't amount to much. And she gives one last plea that she was anything more than a soldier to him, not to let Arius use the Arcana, and he leaves his back to her and walks away. This is yet another scene that in a better show could be really impactful. Maybe if they had spent some of the first season building up this father-daughter rapport, or even just some time in the second season outside of a lazy flashback in the episode where you're going to do this, it would work. But he's just nothing. Lady's annoying, even if it's less so than the previous season. And to me, this is also kind of the sign of a bad writer, because they very clearly think that he's just so evil that they can't make him compelling because their hatred for that type of person is too much. We go back to Arius and Dante, where he's telling Dante that society holds down individual talent. This is really hard to take seriously when he's running a giant mega corporation of presumably hundreds of thousands of people. And it's a shame that Dante is so dumb in the show, because they could have an interesting talk. Dante could point out that people at the top of society have also trampled all over those at the bottom and held down anyone who started at the bottom as well. And again, another situation where putting this show in America in the 2000s kind of fucks with the points that you're trying to make. We see inventors and entrepreneurs and all kinds of business people rise from the bottom to the middle class, bottom to the top, middle class to the top, whatever. The show just can't get out of its own way. And even though Dante's dumb, he does give, I think, at least a pointed retort that he's been by himself the entire time and it's never made him anything great. I think this is one of the weak points of Arius's character, is that not having societies limits what you can build. The constant chaos and struggle for survival, the lack of infrastructure, which limits the resources available to you. But Dante is not smart enough to make all these points. I don't know if Adi Shankar is either. I think this is a bit of the weaker portion of Arius's character. It's one of those things that if you think about it, it can be interesting that the time and place of existence where brilliant individuals can excel due to society's resources, technologies, government systems, all of these play a factor in who ends up changing the world. So when Arius says all this, my personal feeling is like, boo-hoo, you might not be allowed to murder people or enslave them, and you might have to pay off some government officials depending on what country you're in. But he's literally more powerful than the president in the most powerful country that's ever existed. And the show demonstrates that earlier this season. Fuck off. And the conversation slowly shifts to Dante's relationship with Lady. After he says that he's been singular and never done anything, Arius realizes what he's talking about and calls Arkham a defective product and says that she's incapable of love and that Dante is nothing more than a temporary salve for her wounds, which ends up being correct. Make of that what you will, I guess. I don't know if the show did this deliberately because he's the villain, but usually your villains lie and manipulate. He literally just described exactly how Lady acts in about 2 episodes here. She got what she wanted from Dante with a capital D, and now she doesn't need him. The show doesn't seem competent enough to me for it to be intentional. It makes me think more they just don't understand the character's actions in the show. And as Arius keeps trying to mess with Dante's mind, he says that Sparta would have wanted him to join. I appreciate how bold and shameless his manipulations are, and he reaffirms that it was Mundus that killed Dante's mother, and he should join Arius for revenge if nothing else. I do like this little shit talk from Dante here, where he says, have you considered that maybe you're just not that good if you had all these lifetimes and you haven't been successful? What is the system holding you back from? I do agree with Dante's point because of how Arius views himself, but it seems like he's also literally the most powerful man in the world. But the show takes it too far for me. It kind of turns back to the insecure, insincere writing, where he says that he could have come up with better stuff than a cyborg arm or a clone army, and turns it into a big joke. And this is a scene that the show does pretty well, where there's 2 layers to the mind manipulation. So Arius whoops Dante's ass, he's crazy strong, and then just rips his fucking head off. And then Dante wakes back up, it was all a simulation. But that's finally an example of them having a cool concept and actually doing something with it that isn't just surface level, throw out a vague idea and move on. And I like this little touch too, where Dante is very clearly shook up It's almost like a re-zero type thing. And Arias is kind of mocking him, saying that it seems like it had an effect. And Dante says, put me back in, I think I can take you this time. So he does recover quickly, but you can definitely see the initial shock. Whoever had input on this scene should have more input. And here's another pretty solid line from Arias, where he says, you're going to join us, Dante, but I guess it'll be the easy way. And then just pushes a button and the machine starts stealing his blood for the rebirth of Argisax. Vergil and Maddie are walking toward their boss fight, and he's ordering her around like, hurry up. It is amusing that he just doesn't give a shit at all that she's a kid. Of course, he doesn't care about humans in general. He didn't care about his own mom, so But it's a funny little dynamic you have here. Maddie says that she lost her grandpa, and Vergil opens up about his mom. Kind of a weird character thing for me here. He seems pretty closed off to everyone except for Dante, especially given just his general disdain for humans. And we get some more lines pulled straight from the game here. A little bit weird when he's talking to a little girl. It creates this really disjointed feeling. It does lead into our fight with the Trismagia. Baines goes to Arias Gala to celebrate, and he wants to operate the weapon to strike Mundus as commander-in-chief, but Arias says it's too complicated and realizes that Baines talked to Lady. But even now, Baines is a true believer, and Arias says you should have listened. Hilariously, Baines says arrest him, as if he hasn't seen Arias' powers already. We go to the scared guy who's babysitting Lady. His name is Tom, and Lady's obviously trying to get him to let her go. And this is a scene that easily could have been made better if Baines wasn't super dumb and actually went up to Arias with a plan instead of just walking right up to him to be killed. And Tom says that he killed the president by accident, so Lady's trying to help him redeem himself. This is alternating between the Gala and these two in short segments. Arias blows up the army of guys like fireworks. Super subtle that it's his celebration of blood. We get a little speech here from Arias that's either contradictory or just worded in a really weird manner, where he talks about how people like Baines in every system just want to hold him up, but they don't recognize true prophets, radicals, and heretics like himself. I'm not really sure how you could be a true prophet and a heretic. It's most likely just a poorly worded monologue if the idea is that they're trying to convey that the actual useful people were cast out to uphold the shitty systems, which I'm sure was the intent. That one could have used a redraft. Even now, Baines says that his lord will protect him, and Lady shows up. Kai blocks Lady's shot with the sword of Sparta, and Dante somehow knows, I guess, because of whatever blood is in the bullets, but he transforms into his devil form and pretty much teleports to exactly where they are in like half a second, and then passes out because he protected the main character. Freak on a Leash by Korn plays, and Baines gets blasted away. Again, another very bizarre kind of edgelord song choice. The Argisax transformation begins, and he starts sucking the life out of everyone around with these big black ghost spider leg tentacle things. He was nice enough to skip Lady though, very kind. Episode 7 starts us off with the Trismagia fight, and we get to see Vergil's training with Mundus, and then we go back through some scenes we already saw earlier, like him dealing with Beowulf and Jester, and he gets confirmation that the Ouroboros symbol is being branded on his mother's killers by Mundus, and it was in fact Mundus who killed his mom. It feels like the way they've had Vergil shitting on his mom all season kind of undercuts this moment that they spent all these episodes building up. It makes it really inconsequential to say, well, this guy killed your mom if you don't actually care about your mom anyway. He breaks through the mind games and escapes with Maddie, and he reaffirms that he doesn't care about Maddie's grandpa or the millions more that Argisax will kill because he wants his revenge. A lot of this episode is Argisax feasting on people. I really wish they would have nailed his design from the game. Not a huge fan of that game overall, but his design was pretty sweet. The anime one's not terrible. I just don't like it as much. We have to watch Dante wake up from getting his ass whipped again. And if you rewatch this, I feel like it's kind of insulting because they continue to try to tighten this bond between Lady and Dante, literally going into the last episode for her to ghost him. I really hate this dialogue from Lady. She's definitely been less annoying this season, but this type of stuff I still don't enjoy, where Dante is worried about her and she goes straight to feeling sorry for herself and saying that she can't get off easy for causing this when many people were involved. So she's just kind of sitting here sulking while hundreds of people have already been killed and thousands to millions more will be, as she just feels bad for herself. And the two of them need to stop Kai from opening up the rift and Argisax from killing people. So obviously they split up. You know who's going where. Dante shoots a rocket at Argisax from a skyscraper and then rides it down, which is a nod to Devil May Cry 3. I'm glad they finally did a reference in a way that makes sense with the context of the show. And we get a line here while Dante is fighting Argisax that I absolutely hate. He says, "What should I call you? Argisax is kind of meh." And I think this is Adi's true feelings bleeding through. And those feelings are that Devil May Cry is nothing more than a vessel that he thought he could exploit to tell the stories that he wants to tell. I absolutely hate this kind of winking at the camera. Like, oh, isn't this story so stupid? And this whole world is dumb, actually. Oh, it's just Pizza Man with a sword. You see it in comic book movies too. Supergirl just did it with the name Supergirl. Masters of the Universe did it with He-Man. The older Marvel movies used to make fun of all the costumes and their comic book looks when they used to do the more grounded ones. If you think the property is stupid, fuck off and create your own story. But their talent is fucking hacks that if they don't strap their story to an IP that the fans have built built up that they don't care about. No one will watch and they fucking know it. Eat a dick. Lady tries to talk Kai down, but Kai just leaves Lady to her military squad. But who do you think swings in to save the day? It's Tom, the plot convenient blondie that only shows up when needed to save Lady. We kind of just alternate between Lady beating dudes up with her bare hands and Dante fighting Argisax. Dante starts getting his soul sucked by Argisax, and Vergil's Yamato is also a boomerang, I guess, because he cuts the soul sucker tentacles. Lady gets held at gunpoint for like 15 seconds without actually getting shot so that Tom can throw a fire extinguisher and randomly exposit that he was a college quarterback. He's a man of all types of convenience. Vergil saves Dante with a gateway to a rooftop and lectures Dante about not running away with the Arcana, and Dante says that he thought he could destroy it. The plan for the two of them boils down to their devil trigger being enough for a non-powered up Argisax, but then they're just wrong, so Vergil still isn't as smart as he thinks he is. Vergil has a line here where he's trying to get Dante to have the feeling to activate his devil trigger, and Vergil says it's only in our suffering that our full senses are engaged. It makes sense for his character. Not sure how much it really means, broadly speaking, but that's fine. He's kind of doing like the Sith thing of tapping into your anger and fear and sadness for power, which I think obviously makes sense when you're talking about demons powering up. Eventually, Lucy and Tom get to the roof with Maddie, and Kai has the sword of Sparta and eggs Lady on about Baines and her mom dying. Instead of just flying away, they fight, and Lady gets obscene plot armor this fight. Kai literally kicks Lady off a skyscraper, and instead of just watching her fall to her death, attacks her so that Lady can hold onto her leg and survive. I mean, just set your fight up in a different environment. Have Lady be a bit more clever, or have Lady get the sword and run to a basement or something that negates her flying. Anything but this. And Dante thinks about Lucan and Maddie and Lady and all the people that he's lost before he finally ends up in a memory where he's talking to his mom again and then transforms. This conversation between Dante and his mom feels really unnecessary. It's just explaining Dante's motivations and feelings, which are readily apparent. But either way, he's tapped into the dark side, so he transforms. We get another piss poor music choice where Dante shoots a jukebox and says they work better with music. And this is a song that's played during like an opening goofy fight scene. It's in Devil May Cry 3 in the opening scene. You're kind of just cutting down some goons. There's a million better songs you could choose for your climactic battle. I'll talk about more in the music section. After Kai was nice enough to save Lady, Lady is somehow able to get enough leverage in the sky to suplex Kai down to the exact roof that they were already on before. Don't know how those physics work, don't care. Anyway, Kai was a fake, and Maddie out of nowhere shoots the real one with a demon bullet because I guess she's good with pistols. And we get what I would say is a top 3 contender for cringe lines in this show, which is a high fucking bar, where Maddie becomes store brand Ripley.
That's for my grandpa, you stupid, ugly bitch!
And Lady tells her not to swear because it's bad, which could be mildly amusing if they had like a sisterly relationship and Lady was cussing in front of her routinely. But Maddie might be a bigger walking plot contrivance than Tom, and who gives a shit about either one, frankly. Argisax soul sucks the wounded Kai and then just beats the shit out of Dante and Vergil. And then he soul sucks the two of them and gets way more powerful until Vergil cuts a tentacle. And Argisax kind of looks like a demonic corpser from Gears of War. But now he's too strong, so Dante asks Vergil who to win between Mundus and Vergil, and Vergil says Mundus, so they embrace the open the rift plan. Lady tells Tom to take Maddie away and keep her safe. Dante tells Lady to meet back up at his favorite diner if they lose touch from the rift, so she opens the rift, and Dante and Vergil shoot Argisax now that he knows how to use his guns after 2 seasons, and they knock Argisax through the rift. I don't really understand the physics of the rift. Obviously it's not a real thing, but it seems like it sucks up things from Earth toward the demon realm, but also from the demon realm toward Earth. So I guess maybe they're merging. And here's another instance where the show feels ashamed of itself, because originally Dante and Vergil said jackpot together, but here Vergil calls it infantile and only Dante says it. At least Dante used it appropriately this time and not for a coin flip. So Vergil chases after Argisax by choice because he wants revenge in the demon realm, and Dante goes after his brother. And Lady is going to get pulled into the rift as well until the main man Tom shows up and saves her. And if Dante doesn't stop fucking around, it's going to be Tom Steal a Girl, unknown last name. And we finally arrived at the finale. Episode 8 starts and ends on what I would call straight up dog shit. We get a quick little clip of Sparta pushing back on Mundus, but this gets fleshed out later. Beowulf shows up to once again cry about Mundus' level of trust in Vergil, and Mundus just says, shut the fuck up. And this is all kind of filler and time wasting for a finale. There's no satisfactory payoff for it. We literally see Beowulf in like episode 1 and then episode 8, and he gets beat down like a bitch. As Beowulf leaves, He complains to Jester, who's just a little needler, obviously. And then we see Jester being kind of the bard for Mundus and his demons. Very weird way to waste like 5 minutes in your final episode of a pretty short season. Eventually the rift opens and they all see it. They actually put a nice little detail here for world building where Dante has a hard time breathing and he has to actually consciously focus on his demon side. And of course I do like the little detail, but I don't like that it's another problem that's resolved in about 10 seconds. Argisax calls them dumb for thinking they can win in the demon realm where they're not really a part of, and he is, when they couldn't even win on Earth. But Mundus shows up right away to beat his ass. Mundus says that he wants to kill him completely this time. I'm not really sure how he can do that with the 4 arcanas tied to hell inside him, but whatever. The fight's fine. It's kind of like a kaiju fight with random abilities going back and forth. It's always one of those things where when you don't understand the power scales to some degree, you're just kind of like, there's explosions everywhere. Meanwhile, Dante and Vergil know that the sword of Sparta came through and they need to grab one of the amulets before the barrier vanishes completely. It's kind of funny to me that they've given us very specific quantitative times for like half the season, but for this one they just leave it vague, which I think is an odd choice when you want the stakes and tension to be at its highest. You could even just do the whole scene, see how long it takes, and then say we have 1 minute more. Whatever. Mundus' big ass just kind of teleports behind Argisax and rips Argus out of his chest. If they were going to kill Argisax this way, I think it's kind of lame that they didn't just let Vergil and Dante do this together, because that should be something they're capable of if they're going to beat Mundus in the 3rd season, which is presumably the end of the show. But Mundus cuts Argisax's head off and tosses it. Argus, as he's dying, says it took him 28 lifetimes to live for just a moment as a god, and it was a fair trade. I think it's an interesting line from a couple of perspectives. One is that he has the conviction of his beliefs even after almost 700 years, which I think is cool for your villain to believe in his cause all the way to the end and not back out, not having any regrets. I think it's a pretty respectable way to go. There's also the other implication that maybe he hated all of his lives the entire time. I think it's a pretty interesting thing either way, because you've got a really cool concept where you could have gone with a bit more of a positive message, where maybe he thought that it wasn't worth it because even his rough lives as humans were still precious to him and he didn't realize it until he was dying. Either way, he's bad, he's dead, fuck him. As Dante and Vergil are trying to grab the sword of Sparta, they get surrounded by Mundus and his men. Vergil tells Mundus he knows that it was him who killed their mother, and Mundus says that he molded him well. The greatest threat is dead now and Earth is open for expansion. Beowulf still wants to kill Dante and Vergil, but Mundus says no, they need unity and order. That also could have been something that was a lot more fun to play with if Argisax believed in rampant individualism and chaos, and Mundus believed in order and sort of hierarchy and empirical expansion. Oh well. Mundus says that everything he did was to purge Vergil of weakness, and Vergil said he isn't stupid, but Mundus says, well, I could have just kept you and tortured you forever. And he promises to share the power that he would have shared with Sparta with Vergil. And this is where it kind of goes off the rails for me, because they want a certain result, and the show is twisting itself in pretzels to get there. Mundus says Sparta was loyal to him even in his betrayal because Mundus lost sight of what he was supposed to be. And I think the show thinks that it's making things more complicated and interesting by changing Sparta from taking an interest in humans and wanting to protect them with the barrier to Sparta being mad that Mundus didn't rule how he liked and essentially throwing a tantrum. I don't really understand why you would make this change where Mundus believes Sparta is betraying him because he cares about humans in the original lore and altering it to make Sparta a whiny bitch. Those motivations are so different, and one is completely uncompelling and uninteresting. And the fact that there's no chance of Sparta showing up to undo that also just makes it like, what the fuck? The existence of this entire story is because a guy was mad at his boss. We see Mundus couldn't trust anyone, he was executing people, and to stop Mundus' desire for conquest and expansion, Sparta created the barrier. There's just no need for this change. It serves no purpose for impacting the characters, and it just makes the story and world building worse. I mean, could you imagine if God came down to Earth one day and all the beliefs that people had about him and how special humans are got boiled down to him being like, oh yeah, I was bored and then I forgot about you guys? It would just shatter so many people's lives. And this is the equivalent of that for Devil May Cry. It seems like a change that was made just to make a change. I can't really see any artistic merit to that decision. And it just keeps going where Mundus goes on to say that Sparta viewed humans the way that humans view insects. Their mom was nothing but a curiosity because she was a pretty human. Dante throws a tantrum and Vergil just says that their dad was never around. And they very thoroughly and very clearly articulate by having Mundus say that Sparta could never feel love for a sapien. He only knew their mom for a decade and had known Mundus for centuries. So this isn't like open to interpretation. It's not a gray area. The show very, very clearly wants to lay out his motivations. It's okay to leave things nebulous sometimes. And finally, everybody fights. Beowulf dies in like 2 seconds. It's not very interesting. They're all just fodder to waste a little time and set up for Dante and Vergil to grab the Sword of Sparta at the same time. Dante proposes they go back to Earth together, close the rift, get strong, and then come back to fight Mundus when they're ready. Vergil says that Mundus is telling the truth, and Vergil believes that he can gain power to be strong enough to be beyond threat. I find this to be a bit of an uncompelling argument. I don't really see a reason that he can't go to Earth and get stronger, be in less danger, and still gain power if that's his only goal. And I think this kind of screws up the end of the season as well, where it ends on a cliffhanger of Vergil fighting Mundus. And we get some Devil May Cry 5 references in this fight, like where Dante pulls the sleeve off of Yamato and then throws it back onto it while Vergil's still holding it. And this is where we get the payoff that I was bitching about from their fight as kids that they set up earlier in the season, where Vergil uses Dante's move to beat him, except that he runs him through because they're using swords and not sticks. And obviously Dante loses again. And we get another line yanked straight from the games that makes absolutely no sense in the context of the show. This is where you get the line from Vergil about if their positions were switched, would their fates be as well? And Adi clearly just watched random Devil May Cry clips on YouTube. There doesn't really seem to be a lot of thought put into this. It's very frustrating. Vergil blasts Dante toward the rift and takes an amulet out and launches it at Dante so that he can get back through and close the rift behind him. Mundus tries to catch it, but doesn't get there in time, and Dante falls to Earth like a meteor, but he's pretty much invincible. And I think this ending really screws up the power scaling again for Vergil, because he tells Mundus that he was right and made him strong, but he killed his mom, so he wants to kill Mundus and lead the invasion of Earth himself. If Vergil loses this and becomes locked away again, who cares? It was his choice. And if he beats him, which he obviously can't, then we just lost our big bad for the series off screen. So I don't even really see how they can correct for this next season. They'll probably do the thing where they turn him into Nello Angelo, Dante frees him, and then they actually team up finally, would be my guess. But I feel like this really just fucks off the whole thing with a bit of overexposure to Mundus. We cut to Lady. She wakes up with Tom and Maddie and then narrates her note that she leaves for Dante and say that she believes that Dante is alive and went to the cafe. Again, making her a huge asshole that she couldn't even be bothered to check discreetly or indirectly just to see if he's okay. And she talks about her mom's murder and that her and Dante didn't actually have feelings for each other beyond sharing pain. And he was just an outlet for that pain, but she can't ignore it and she needs to confront her dad. Fuck off, show. Of course, they had to get one last bit of commentary in here. They throw in some crap about martial law and curfews. And Lady pretty much summarizes herself for the first 2 seasons, that she's an asshole and leaving him behind, and explains that it isn't our blood that defines us, it's who we are. Really nice of her to spell out the themes, being the biggest brick in the whole show. She literally does the it's not you, it's me. You're the best and I'm the worst, so we can't be together. So just to be clear, they rushed their relationship to be together just to have her reset it and go off on her own and be the asshole yet again. Absolutely mishandled that entire thing. It would have made a lot more sense for them to spread out the repairing of their relationship over the first 7 episodes. When they finally get to the point where maybe Dante thinks they have something, then she pulls back. Instead of having Dante in a tube for an episode, speed running her lying to him for 2, and then all of a sudden they're together in 1, and then back apart a couple episodes later. Just bonkers decisions. The season ends with Dante on the ground crying after giving Vergil and Lady clear goals for next season. And if that doesn't sum up just how much this show has to put Dante in but doesn't want to, I don't know what else does. That's the season. As you can see, I felt like there was a lot of interesting concepts and things that could have been done, but a lot of these ideas, characters, relationships are built into the lore, and they wasted a lot of potential for their own ideas. It's exceedingly frustrating to watch adaptations of things that you like, and they make choices that don't make any sense because they can't be bothered to have anything beyond a surface level understanding of the lore, of the characters, of why the relationships and dynamics work. And this is their job. They're getting a lot of money for this, and they can't take a couple weeks to play some games and read some books or manga. Anyway, fire Adi Shankar. Let's move on to the characters. The character work for Dante and the 2 main characters, Lady and Vergil, is kind of meh. I think it's pretty shallow and incoherent, even if this show is the only thing that you've ever seen from Devil May Cry. In a vacuum, I could see people enjoying them in a kind of shallow way where you don't think about it too much, so you just think they're all right. But of course, when you have a direct comparison that's so much better, it makes it seem even worse. Even their own characters that could be interesting, like Baines, are just completely ludicrous, and even the parts of the story that could be interesting are completely undermined by everything else going on, mainly how stupid and shallow they are. Why don't we start with Dante, since in theory it's his show. If it wasn't already obvious, I find him to be the most frustrating character in the show. He's pretty weak, he's Lady's support man more than anything else, he's incredibly dumb, and he doesn't actually have any of the characteristics that you would want in a protagonist. They don't get him completely wrong in the most vague sense of the word, because he does act a bit goofy while he's doing serious things, things. He obviously cares about Vergil, but once you get in any more depth than that level, he's a mess. And part of that is not the fault of season 2, because season 1 laid the groundwork for this. I don't want to lean too much into an adaptation argument, but I think it helps emphasize the point here that in the original lore, when he already knows he's half demon and his dad gave him the Sword of Rebellion, he loves his mom who's a human, and he has these built-in values where he cares about humanity. So later in his life, when he's been living and operating with the humans, and that causes the areas that he lives in to get attacked by demons, he realizes that he needs to be alone to not put others at risk. He's a person who's had a traumatic life, but still had good people around him in general, and they've helped him get through it all, and this is vital to his character. You get the goofy pizza-eating, joke-cracking slob is how he copes with what his life has been. And there's numerous times throughout the game you see this mask slip in serious moments, and the games do a good job of understanding when to dial the goofy persona down a notch.
I'll take care of him.
Why do you care so much?
This whole business started with my father sealing the entrance between the two worlds. And now, my brother's trying to break that spell and turn everything into Demonville. This is my family matter, too. Quite frankly, at first, I didn't give a damn. But because of you, I know what's important now. I know what I need to do.
The show has stripped out and tinkered with his backstory, which completely recontextualizes his motivations. And I think they actually wanted him to be more of a blank slate so that they could have creative flexibility to do with him what they wanted to. After the way that humanity treated him in season 1 and him realizing that his brother was alive, it probably would have made more sense for his arc to be more of an internal struggle about whether or not to side with the demons. I'm being a bit hyperbolic, but the way they watered down his personality and made him so weak, I don't really see how he could be comfortable being around anyone while he's still unable to protect them. His altruism in saving people, even when it hurts him, relies on his strength and the actual ability to help, which he can't really do in this show. Everything regarding Dante himself and the relationships he has with the people around him just feels off, altered, watered down, and in many ways simply incompetent. The fact that Lady betrays him multiple times and he's cool with it the way that he is, humans captured and tortured him and he's cool with it. He's constantly relying on everyone around him to think for him, and he just kind of goes with the flow like some kind of overloyal dog, has turned him into an inept, gullible, dumb, bumbling idiot. It's a shame what they've done to his character from a storytelling perspective, but even more so that the people who've watched this show and not played the games are going to see this shit version and think that this is what the character is. Lady also has a lot of problems that were built up in season 1 and they've tried to undo too quickly here. From the game perspective, she's a bit weird because they've expanded her role so much and tied her into Darkcom while also altering her personality to make her just insanely cringe. But a lot of it really does just hinge on the fact that they're trying to course correct from the way that they set her up in season 1, and then to end this season, she starts and ends in the same place anyway. In season 1, she spends the whole time being sort of a humanist, loyal attack dog of the government and betrays Dante multiple times. And it's really fascinating to me that they try to both course correct and undo the course correction all in 8 episodes. Her arc this season should probably have either been just the first half of it, but spread out over the course of the season, or they should have just doubled down on season 1 and had her fully commit to doing whatever it takes to beat the demons. And you can tell that they're loosely trying to mimic the Devil May Cry 3 arc, since that's her primary source of story, while also adding a bunch of fucking cussing in. And what they do, and it's super lazy, is try to use a fairly brief time jump of what appears to be a few months to just excuse all of her shit behavior for season 1. Even though it doesn't really make sense, they try to make her seem like she's really conflicted about what she did to Dante, even though there's not a real reason that we see that her mindset or attitude would have changed over the course of the last few months while they're waging war against hell. And this sort of thing is where the world building really bites them in the ass, because they do this weird thing where she's questioning military tactics in a battle for the survival of the species after a successful mission where they made it all the way to their enemy's throne room to steal his prized possession and find a way to possibly win the war. You would think a soldier like her would understand that sacrificing men to possibly save the species is a trade that you have have to make in her position. And I get that they're going for a blind trust and authority type thing with her, but you can't make her this jaded, angry, ruthless character and then have her also be naive. She waits until Vergil exposes the murdered innocent demons before she even investigates what happened to them on her own. And it takes her about 30 seconds. Her guilt for what happened to Dante, which we don't see any kind of repentance for, she puts her face in her hands one time, and her blind faith in this organization that she seems to hate and think are all full of assholes getting exposed is what leads to her turn against them. What they probably should have done is either have them repeatedly botching missions, people are dying for no reason, she begins questioning their competence, and then you can have her turn on the organization after months and months of ineptitude in this war that they started, at least in the eyes of the show. Or you could just have humans being overwhelmed and they need more firepower while she's complaining Dante is frozen and we have a super powerful weapon right here. And what they end up doing is a sort of in-between where they're being pretty effective and accomplishing their objectives. She just doesn't like how it's done. Having her question a trade-off of the lives of a few hundred soldiers for a weapon that they believe will save the entirety of humanity just makes her an idiot. Another way to do it could be that she's actually interacting with the demons that she saved. You can see she's really trying to turn around her views, and then suddenly that access gets revoked. They have to move the demons. They could blame the war for them being in danger or whatever other excuse. And then she starts to get suspicious of why things are changing the way that they are. It's insane for her to just trust Baines, the blatant anti-demon zealot who wants to nuke hell of all people. And she trusts him with the demon lives and literally never checks in until Vergil becomes the catalyst on Jerry Springer. And with how much she hated demons last season, you really need to earn that arc, which I didn't think they did the first season either. But it makes it even worse that they try to rush through that in 2 episodes just to undo the consequences of her betrayal of Dante as fast as possible so they can speed run their shipping love arc where they fight one time together. Dante does a sleight of hand with a coin and she shoves her tongue down his throat and then fucks him. And not only do they undo her entire season of hatred and backstory in a couple episodes, that's not even the main plot. It's just one subplot of those couple episodes. So it's really minimal screen time. It was also a huge mistake for them to just put Dante on ice between seasons. So all of this time, nothing with their relationship has changed actively between the two of them. It's all just been driven by her guilt that we don't even really get to see why she would feel that way. If you want to shift her goal from killing demons and saving humanity to a personal one, you really need Dante to be there. Even if you do the time jump, you can do the time jump in a way that shows they've been working together, they have good rapport, their relationship has improved off screen. Obviously, it's not great because you want to see that kind of change, but you can live with that understanding. In the same way that you see the dynamic change between Obi-Wan and Anakin between episodes 1 and 2 and 2 and 3. As much as I don't like this flashback to try to backdoor an emotional past between Lady and Baines, if you want to do this, beyond the fact that you should have shown more of their relationship beyond boss and employee, I think you really need to have some of his views instilled in her. I just don't believe that a religious zealot would take a teenage girl in, groom her for his broader purposes, and she would share none of his views outside of they both hate demons. Even though they don't do nearly enough with his views, there's very clearly a religious component to them. He has certain things that he believes, even if they don't make any sense. So the fact that they have no overlap at all, I just don't believe. And again, this is something you could pretty easily tie Dante into if there's religious components that say every single demon is 100% evil, and then she meets Dante who's not and she questions her views. At a minimum, this would make her relationship with Baines more interesting. It would make Baines more interesting as a character on his own. But everything they did with Lady in season 1 was just cringe, and then everything they tried to do in season 2 felt both rushed and undercut by season 1. And from the meta aspect, I really hate that they took a genuine bond between the two of them in Devil May Cry 3, botched it, injected romance they didn't earn, and then treated the whole thing as, we both just had bad childhoods. It's incredibly shitty, disrespectful, and lazy storytelling, and that doesn't even get into them making her the driving character both seasons instead of Dante.
A demon like you wouldn't understand.
Dante.
Dante. Please. Free my father.
I will, lady.
Are you crying?
It's only the rain.
The rain already stopped.
Devils never cry.
I see. Maybe somewhere out there, even a devil may cry when he loses a loved one. Don't you think?
Maybe.
Let's move on to Vergil. Before I get into Vergil, there are numerous in-depth analysis of him on YouTube, and just him specifically, not even all of Devil May Cry lore that you have to sift through. One very good one that I saw was done by a guy named Manga Cayman. I haven't seen a ton of his channel, but it was a very good video. And if at this point you're still here, you should finish this one first, but then check his out. I'll just give a quick overview of his game character for comparison here. His character, I think, is pretty simple, but very effective. In the games, a lot of it is carried by his design and voice work, because he's just perpetually aura farming. The show adds things in, and I think the show thinks more complicated is better for a character that has layers already that they don't seem to appreciate. In the games, Vergil is very obviously Dante's foil. They have a shared tragedy that they responded to in different fashions. His loneliness and weakness are what drive him in his quest for power, and it's a very ends justify the means mentality. He's pretty smug and likes to flex his power, but the ultimate goal is to never feel vulnerable and helpless again because of what it's already cost him, and embracing his demonic side is the means to that end. At the same time, he does care about his brother, and he's in a constant struggle with what he feels is his weak human side and those urges to not be totally ruthless. And I think there's a pretty interesting meta commentary there about sacrifice of humanity for power and conquest as well. This show takes those elements and adds in that Vergil is actually the weaker of the two. It doesn't really serve a purpose in the story, although it does have the effect of making Dante a lazy loser. I actually think that even if they were the same, but Vergil turned out better than Dante because of Mundus torturing and training him, the result is still the same. They've made Vergil better based on some outside force. They also make a weird choice to have Vergil pout even as an adult about their mother loving Dante more as a kind of excuse for why he isn't sympathetic, even though he says that he hates her. And then they combine this with him seeing the truth from the Trismagia and changing nothing. So the changes they add in to try to complicate things really just introduce unnecessary contradictions and end up making him a more generic character. I think Vergil is already a pretty tricky character because he's so might makes right, and superficially it's a very shallow motivation. Power is the end all be all, but the changes that they make him both more evil and dumber. And similar to Lady, his character progression this season also ends up being completely meaningless. He ends up back in hell and needing to fight Mundus now instead of back in hell and working for Mundus, which if I had to guess, he'll probably work for him next season anyway, possibly by force. So his development was that he went from wanting to kill Argisax to wanting to kill Mundus. Bravo, Adi. Another quote-unquote layer that they add is him being groomed and lied to by Mundus. This just turns him into a glorified goon for his entire life instead of an individual with his own identity and goals. And it's a choice I just don't really understand. The fact that he goes around constantly talking about questioning sources while never questioning his, and he sees the amount of betrayal that goes on, all of this makes him look really bad as well. And I think by making him come across as more stupid or naive, if you want to be generous or manipulated or whatever, you've also really undercut the arrogant part of his personality that the show half commits to because he's subservient to Mundus. When you have him challenge Mundus and lose, and he's enslaved by force, his character is at least still intact because he simply ran to someone more powerful than him, as opposed to being manipulated and ruled by him. Overall, the changes they make just don't really do much except add more problems where you didn't need to have any, while turning him into a watered down, generic version of himself. I'm going to move on to Arius, but not for too much. He's already gotten quite a bit of discussion in the story part of the video, but my biggest issue with Arius is really that we just didn't get more. I would have gladly cut out every part of Bane's in this season to get more with Arius, particularly in his backstory. Yeah, he seems like a psychic at certain points, but whatever. You could do the show a favor and attribute that to his living for so long and humans being predictable and cyclical. But he's a cool villain, competent, cool backstory. His plans work out, and he loses because of a desperate plan that cost our protagonist at the end of the season. It's about as much as you can ask for your villain, at least results-wise. I want to touch on Bane's just outside of the story components that I've mentioned already, because he's maybe the strangest character to me, and he might be the most distinct character in the show that just doesn't get used. They want him to be a Dick Cheney stand-in, but they also want him to be a religious zealot and father figure to Lady, but also a buffoon. Everything about him is just on the surface, and it seems like they still don't know what they wanted to do with him even when he died. As much as I've said I would trade his screen time for almost anything else, we probably could have used a flashback about his come to Jesus moment. Maybe he had seen a demon as a kid and gotten saved somehow, so he knew demons were real and that turned him into a hardcore theocrat. But he just kind of says it's God's will over and over and calls it a day. He gets a fair amount of screen time, and they don't even do the thing where he explains why he has faith, or any struggles that he has with his faith, or any doubts he has about it, or used to have about it. He's like a broken record. It's almost like he recorded a certain amount of lines of dialogue, and they just had to figure out how to keep looping them into the show, like some kind of NPC. They also don't really make him seem very conflicted about using demons to help his cause. He's just like, yeah, Jester, come on over. Come on in, Dante. They can be redeemed because my beliefs are awesome. And that's just sort of the end of it, while he's also torturing and killing other refugee demons. Very strange combination of decisions they've given him throughout these 2 seasons. I already mentioned this with Lady's part, but their entire relationship is treated very haphazardly. The politics between him and Hopper are really nothing. He's just the boss. And I mentioned I would have liked to see more of his relationship with Lady, or her be impacted by his views. I think you could also go the other way with it with him, where they have really conflicting views, and on the surface they have a father-daughter relationship, but it's also very clear that they're just using each other for their own goals. That could have been a super fun dynamic as well, especially because they're both dickheads. He just says God, God, God a bunch, walks straight up to Arius, and then Arius explodes him. Just a complete waste of time and a massive missed opportunity for one of their only interesting ideas. Let's just move on to some of the side characters real quick. I'm going to kind of bunch these all up together with my main man Tom, who may or may not cuck Dante next season. I touched on all these a bit throughout the video, and there's not a ton to say about any of them. They shit on Sparta for no reason. Tom, Maddie, and Jester are just there to make sure certain plot points happen. They do zero work to make them actual characters beyond what they did for Jester last season. I wouldn't be surprised if Maddie becomes very important next season, though, with her own little revenge story. The president just continues to be George Bush and then dies, and literally no one cares. We see no ramifications for this. It's kind of crazy. The president, vice president, and CEO of the biggest company in the world all disappear within a day. It isn't even mentioned in their little news thing at the end of the season. They just vaguely say the military has instituted martial law so they can beat you over the head with their political bullshit one more time. No Secretary of State blah 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 has stepped up after the sudden disappearance of Baines and Hopper. Just fuck off. Gotta get our social commentary in one more time. I think it's pretty obvious how frustrated I am with the character work in this show, along with the story itself. This is a pervasive issue with adaptations where changes are made that more often than not are downgrades because these arrogant pricks in Hollywood think that they're just better. Let's go ahead and move on to the music now. The choice and use of music in this show was atrocious. Without even looking it up, I knew Adi Shankar was a few years older than me because he loves the 2000s music, and I like the music as well. Not for Devil May Cry and not for 10 minutes at a time. Sadly for this show, music is typically used to enhance emotions, ratchet up tension, and if it has lyrics, they align with the themes of a show and hopefully the specific scene that they're playing during. Music in this show doesn't seem to have much thought put into it beyond I like this song and doesn't it sound fucking awesome, bro? He also continues to inappropriately use music from the games on top of the self-indulgent music video style scenes themselves. I'm not going to go through every single song, mainly just the ones that stood out to me because they were so jarring that I was like, what is this music choice every time it happened? I'll go ahead and say now music is tough on YouTube because of copyright. Unfortunately for you, I can't sing for shit, so you're just going to hear me read some lyrics. So let's get into it. The first one is about a minute 20 into the show, so it's a fast fucking start, and the song is Getting Away with Murder by Papa Roach. It plays for a bit and then comes back around the 5-minute mark. And first of all, just the way that it's used and how long it's used, it feels like a music video. There used to be a trend on YouTube of people making their own music videos with whatever song and then editing footage from a show they liked. I'm not sure if that's still a thing or not because of all the copyright stuff. But if you read the lyrics for this as well, this is during the invasion of hell and war between earth and demons. And here are the bulk of the lyrics since they repeat. Somewhere between happiness and sadness, I need to calculate what creates my own madness, and I'm addicted to your punishments, and you're the master, and I'm waiting for disaster. I feel irrational, so confrontational. To tell the truth, I am getting away with murder. It is impossible to never tell the truth, but the reality is I'm getting away with murder. I drink my drink and I don't even want to. I think my thoughts when I don't even need to. I never look back because I don't even want to, and I don't need to because I'm getting away with murder. This song is obviously about someone's internal conflict and struggle and getting away with some kind of bad or destructive behavior. Charitably, you could say the scene maybe applies to Lady who's sneaking in, but this is a war scene. The internal struggles are are kind of irrelevant, and her behavior is to help win the war. Maybe if she was doing some kind of kamikaze thing, or torturing people for no reason, or killing innocents, you could work it in a bit better. But this just seems really inappropriate to me, to have a song about internal struggle when you have soldiers just dying on a battlefield. The next one that I want to mention is the unironic use of Bodies by Drowning Pool when Vergil is just mowing down soldiers. I don't even really know if it needs an explanation because it's just fucking cringe. It's a song about mosh pits, if you didn't know that.
Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the...
Maybe the most offensive use of music to me is about 20 minutes into episode 3 when Bury the Light plays as Dante and Vergil fight. This song is from Devil May Cry 5. It's an absolute banger. I was actually in the top 1% of Casey Edwards listeners last month on YouTube because I listen to it all the time. But I'm going to read the first half of these lyrics because it's a very long song, and then I'll get into why I hate this so much. Immortal temptation takes over my mind, condemned, fallen weak on my knees, summon the strength of mayhem. I am the storm that is approaching, provoking black clouds in isolation. I am reclaimer of my name, born in flames. I have been blessed. My family crest is a demon of death. Forsaken, I am awakened. A phoenix's ash in dark divine. Descending misery, destiny chasing time. Inherit the nightmare, surrounded by fate, can't run away. Keep walking the line between the light, led astray. Through vacant halls, I won't surrender. The truth revealed in eyes of ember. We fight through fire and ice forever. Two souls once lost, and now they remember. The entire point of the song in the context of Devil May Cry 5 is that Vergil is trying to bury the light, which in Devil May Cry means his human side, deep within himself to do what needs to be done, to acquire power. The context for the fight in this show is just that Vergil and Dante are fighting, and Vergil is about to fuck Dante up. This is nothing more than Adi Shankar thought. It sounded cool. It's their first fight. Vergil has been referring to himself as the Storm, and that's how it's used. It's completely nonsensical. In the game, the context is that Vergil split himself into Urizen and V. Urizen being the demonic part of himself, pure power. V being the weakened human part of himself, who's also demonstrably weak because he's a cripple. And when these two merge back together, his Vergil form is restored, and now he's back in his half-human, half-demon form. At this point, he's still seeking power while fighting his brother and long-lost son, and Dante is exhausted from fighting to get to Urizen and then defeating him. And because he's exhausted, Vergil tells Dante to recover, and then he'll beat him at full strength.
Get out of my way, Nero!
Defeating you like this has no meaning.
Come on, Vergil. Let's do this.
Heal your wounds, Dante. Get strong. After that, we'll settle the matter.
At this point, Dante is recovered and he's fighting Vergil, but Nero breaks them up before they can kill each other. Vergil is fighting his son to decide who will hold power between the three of them, and this fight is when Bury the Light kicks in, as he's fighting his own child, back in his half-human, half-demon form. Obviously, with all this context, the song and lyrics line up with what's happening to the characters in the story, with what's happening on screen, and Vergil having to bury the goodness in him to do what he feels he must do for power and fight his own son after he's already taken his son's arm, with the stakes being a battle for Earth, gives this song a million times more weight than, oh, isn't it that song you like? Dante versus Vergil. That's what you all wanted, right? Which is how it comes across in the show. The next one that I want to talk about, which is maybe just the weirdest one to me, is about halfway through episode 5, in the montage of Dante and Lady playing with Maddie and hanging out and goofing off. And they used the song Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne. This was like peak middle school for me. Avril Lavigne was awesome. Every boy my age loved her. Thought she was super hot. Her music was catchy. It was everywhere. I bet I still have that CD somewhere if I look hard enough. It's just such a bizarre song choice here, because the song is about a girl who rejected a guy when they were in different cliques, and her clique was the stuck-up one. And I'll read some of the lyrics for the losers here who aren't familiar with this song, and then talk about how weird it is. The song here, not you just because you haven't heard it before, although that is weird too. He was a boy, she was a girl. Can I make it any more obvious? He was a punk, she did ballet. What more can I say? He wanted her, she'd never tell. secretly she wanted him as well. But all of her friends stuck up their nose. They had a problem with his baggy clothes. He was a skater. He was a skater boy. She said, "See you later, boy." He wasn't good enough for her. She had a pretty face, but her head was up in space. She needed to come back down to earth. 5 years from now, she sits at home feeding the baby. She's all alone. She turns on TV. Guess who she sees? Skater boy rocking up MTV. She calls up her friends. They already know, and they've all got tickets to see his show. She tags along and stands in the crowd, looks up at the man that she turned down. He was a skater boy. She said, "See you later, boy." He wasn't good enough for her. Now he's a superstar, slamming on his guitar. Does your pretty face see what he's worth? There's a bit more to it as it goes on, where Avril Lavigne is actually the one with the skater boy, which kind of makes her seem like a petty bitch about a girl who rejected a guy in high school, which happens all the time. But let's just leave that aside for now. The point is pretty obvious. She judged a guy for his social group and ended up with a shit life. They're playing this while they're hanging out with a child. And then right after this, Dante fucks the depression out of Lady. Even if you want to be super charitable and say, well, Lady rejected Dante because he's part of a different group, but now they're together, it still doesn't really make any sense. She didn't hide her feelings because he's a demon. She threw a grenade at his face and put a bomb in his head. There's a screen grab for you. But at this point in the story, they get together, and her regret isn't until the end of the season. All this is aside from the obvious element that this song is about a couples and teen drama is being played while they're babysitting a little girl. It's just fucking weird. Don't include the little girl in this scene. Have them do something playful and play the song. Still not great, but better than like the lead into your hookup is babysitting a child while you're on guard duty. I want to talk about Devil Trigger next. Later in this episode, they actually do have what I would consider to be an appropriate use of the Devil Trigger song, but they use a weird remix, which isn't nearly as cool. You have Dante just going crazy with rage as he enters his devil form, and that's pretty much what the lyrics indicate. So it's not a bad choice. I just don't like the execution. I'll throw Adi a bone there. I'm only going to do a couple more, even though there are songs playing non-stop in this damn show, because I think you get the point by now. Freak on a Leash is another great song. It's by Korn. They use it at the end of episode 6 with the arrival of Argosax, which is absolute insanity. If you ignore like half of it, I guess it could work. Let's read a few lyrics and talk about it. Something takes a part of me, something lost and never seen. Every time I start to believe, something's raped and taken from me. Life's kind of always been messing with me. You want to see the light? Can't they chill and let me be free? So do I. Can't I take away all this pain? You want to see the light? I try to every night, all in vain. Sometimes I cannot take this place. Sometimes it's my life I can't taste. Sometimes I cannot feel my face. You'll never see me fall from grace. Something takes a part of me. You and I were meant to be. A cheap fuck for me to lay. Something takes a part of me. Feeling like a freak on a leash. You want to see the light. Feeling like I have no release. So do I. How many times have I felt diseased? You want to see the light? Nothing in my life is free. With a song like this, you can generally have multiple interpretations and be pretty flexible. The artist straight up said it was about how he felt exploited by the music industry, but I think you could easily interpret this song being about drugs or visiting a prostitute maybe. And it's another one that if you generally want to say, well, it could be applied to Arias, particularly the parts about seeing the light and wanting to be set free. It's still a really odd choice when you could have picked anything related to coming into your own or rebirth or whatever. For me, it's kind of a hard sell when you have Argosax soul-sucking people and destroying the city, and the subtitles on the screen are about a cheap fuck for me to lay. Clearly they have money to spend on music. Just pick something that makes sense. Pay a composer to write a song, pay a band to write a song, pick a local band that you like, whatever. Last couple short ones. Near the end of episode 7, when Dante and Vergil turn to their devil form and are about to fight Argosax for the climactic battle of the season, they use a song called Dante's Office 7 Hells from Devil May Cry 3.
Invitation, huh?
This party's getting crazy. Let's rock.
This is a very strange choice. The context of this in the game is it's the opening level. He's eating pizza. He's fighting low-level thug equivalent demons. It's just sort of like a fun start to your game. It's not really meant for an epic end-of-the-earth battle. All right, and this is the last one that I want to discuss for the music. The show ends with a flashback of Dante and Vergil as kids with a song from Devil May Cry 4 called Shall Never Surrender. The show just ignores that the tone of this song is happy, it's relief. In the game, it's the job is finally done moment. And the show uses this song with a happy and relieved tone with lyrics of accomplishment while Dante is laying in a crater with his face broken. He's lost to his brother again. Lady's just dumped him and gone her own way. And Vergil's about to get butt fucked dry by Mundus in hell. In Devil May Cry 4, when this is used, Nero has finally gotten Kyrie back. Nero and Dante are getting along. Dante gives him the Yamato because he knows it belongs to Nero's father. It's not a super celebratory, huzzah, happy song. It's just low-key happy, lets you feel like you can go out on a high note despite what's happened.
Eternity, come with me. We'll stand and fight together.
And the note that we end season 2 on is essentially the same spot as season 1. Dante's fucked, Lady sucks, and Vergil's in hell. Aside from the general tone, let's go through the lyrics. I'm picking a spot about halfway through. My honored brethren, we come together to unite as one. Against those that are damned, we show no mercy, for we have none. Our enemies shall fall as we uprise to claim our fate. Now and forever, we'll be together in love and in hate. And the chorus is, they will see, we'll fight until eternity. Come with me, we'll stand and fight together. Through our strength, we'll make a better day tomorrow. We shall never surrender. They will see, we'll fight until eternity. Come with me, we'll stand and fight together. Through our strength, we'll make a better day tomorrow. We shall never surrender. It's the lyrics and the tone of the song versus the end of the season. Nothing fits with the tone of this season's ending other than we'll fight until eternity, which for Adi Shankar is as long as he can keep butchering Devil May Cry and cashing fat checks from Netflix. I'm going to leave it there for the music. I'm sure there's someone who's more into music and music theory to make a 5-hour video about how strange and just generally shitty the music choices and usage were this season. The last part of this video is going to be short because I do want to touch on it as an adaptation. I've mentioned some things already and done a little bit of comparison in characters, so I don't want to repeat all that, but I do at least want to discuss it because at the end of the day, if this show wasn't tied to the Devil May Cry brand, I suspect no one would watch or defend it. So as an adaptation, this is yet another frustrating one for a video game property, whether it's Resident Evil, Halo, Splinter Cell, Mario, or countless others. If a show is unfaithful and good, you can at least forgive it to some degree in the sense that you got to enjoy a quality show. It obviously could have been faithful and good, which almost nothing is at this point because these are just vanity projects for people in Hollywood who feel like they can't get their script made into a movie or show on their own. But of course, we got unfaithful and shit, and all the themes and messages are not only lost, but in some ways the show goes against the messaging of the games completely. This, coupled with the general insincerity and seeming disdain that Adi Shankar has for the series, makes it a rough watch for fans of the games and other forms of Devil May Cry media. The show wants to be some kind of biting political or social commentary. It's about 20 years too late, and in doing so, sacrifices the heart of the series, which I believe is the broken and dysfunctional family dynamic combined with the implication that humanity is generally good and worth saving. By taking this political angle, they make a mess of things with the demon refugees and also having all this sci-fi tech that they use to fight demons to the point that it makes me believe that Dante is just unnecessary to his own story. In the beginning of Devil May Cry 5, to start the game, you see pretty clearly that humans just can't fight even low-level demons except for special cases like Lady. So because humans can't really kill any demons on their own, Nero and Dante are obviously super important. Obviously, we see regular soldiers winning against demons enough to get Mundus off his throne. But then once they say that they have this special weapon that they want to send through the rift, theoretically, they could just take Dante's blood and never need him again. It's an insane choice to make with the series' primary protagonist, where the stakes for almost every game are world ending. And just as a matter of world building, I don't buy the lower level demons and even sort of lieutenant level demons getting getting killed by special bullets and rocket launchers, but for some reason the higher level ones wouldn't also be susceptible to the weaponry that humans have developed. In season 1, Dante has a bomb in his head, but it only blows off part of his face, and they agree he's lucky to be alive. With this level of awareness of demons, it feels like they would have had to come up with a way to fight them, and all of society should have evolved differently, including culture and technology. A critical part that I touched on in the story portion of the video is that we see the tragic and conflicting family dynamics throughout the lore, the biggest and most important one being between Dante and Vergil, twins with tragic stories of their own that lead them down paths that are different enough to cause conflict between them. Dante believing human life inherently has value worth protecting, Vergil giving into his trauma to the point where he becomes solely focused on power acquisition. This show muddied up and introduced contradictions into all of these dynamics. I'll be concise since I've already talked for a while and about this specifically, but there's no reason to input things that don't have story relevance. Vergil feeling inferior to Dante and choosing hell over him, Dante seemingly jealous of Vergil getting special treatment by their mother, but then he cares more about their mother than Vergil does. Dante's understanding that he was half demon and that demons attacked their house shapes his personality and reinforces the value he places on humans in general and his own humanity. The two of them growing up close together in the original lore was vital to their characters, but they add this tone of jealousy and resentment from both of them into their childhood, which we don't really explore, and it makes their relationship as adults seem more hateful and contentious. And then they follow that up with them saving each other. When you originally had Vergil be enslaved and turned into Nello Angelo by Mundus, this reinforces his desire for power later on. All these changes just make a mess out of the relationship in ways that make them feel much less human than they do in the games. In this series, other relationships similar to Dante's and Vergil's are prominent throughout the series, like in Devil May Cry 3 with Lady and Arkham. Lady struggles between her inherent love for her father and revenge, and her complete hatred for demons where she believes they're all evil, because Dante slowly disproves this throughout the game. The way that Lady has sincere hatred for Dante that turns into respect is awesome character development for her in Devil May Cry 3, and her journey feels complete even though she's still in touch with Dante and kind of always around helping him out, asking for help, but they're both doing their thing, protecting humanity as best they can, and you can take solace in that after the game ends. And just to give a little bit of perspective, Devil May Cry 3 cutscenes can be cut down to about an hour and a half. The show right now is 16 episodes in, something in the ballpark of 8 hours. Pretty much took the backstory as is, which is nice, but then they just shotgunned it and applied it randomly to whatever, with no clear direction of where they want to go. Because her revenge was motivated very specifically by her father in the game, and the show is just kind of vaguely against demons, where the game gives you the clear objective of pursuing her father, stopping what he's trying to do, and she feels like she has a responsibility to deal with him as his offspring, as family. Her hatred for demons is the same as in the show, but the dialogue they give her in the show just makes her insufferable and edgy. She's very dismissive of the nature of demons and the people around her, and all of that really makes the character suffer and undercuts any motivations that you might be on board with. The game does a really nice job of balancing Dante trying to be nice to her, but also leaving her alone until she's ready to interact with him. The show has her be cruel repetitively. She lies to Dante over and over, and then the show just slams them together into a one-night stand, only for her to take cab money from his wallet and sneak out. Every decision they've made for her character has gone in the direction of making her less and less likable. Her own personal development and relationship to Dante run an excellent parallel to her struggles with her father. She's angry and he's done awful things, and when she comes across his body, she breaks down crying, but still feels an obligation to get revenge on Vergil because her dad blames Vergil for his death. And as the story goes, when Jester reveals that he was also Arkham, Dante insists on fighting him in her place because he's clearly stronger than her and proves it by fighting her. She gives him Kalina Ann, her rocket launcher, which is a huge moment for her character from the time she hated Dante for existing to handing over her weapon named after her late mother. After Dante and Vergil have dealt with him, he's wounded, and he's wounded in his Arkham form. She shoots him and embraces the name Lady that Dante has been using all game because she refused to give him her name, and she cries by the body even though she had the resolve to do what she needed to do. It's a really excellent and tight arc written with purpose. She's a great character with a tragic story, and her connection to Dante makes total sense. The show took this, and after 2 seasons, she's done the anger, multiple betrayals of Dante, slept with Dante, and run off. Their dynamic has been treated as a way to fill time because at this point the relationship has been reset and it could go anywhere because it's been so directionless. They've pretty much ruined what might be the favorite supporting character of the franchise. Another huge change from the lore that's completely screwed the story up is that in the lore we see good in a handful of demons. Like Like in the first game where Trish starts out as an evil servant of Mundus and eventually chooses to work with Dante to oppose him and save humanity. There's other examples too in the games like Lucia, but the main point is that the anime throws all this out the window and the parts it keeps, it doesn't understand. By framing this whole thing and normalizing how many good demons there are, it undercuts huge moments in the original story, because in the original story, you pretty much think that all demons are bad, all demons are demons. So when one of them flips, it plays into the idea of what makes someone human being their actions, not their blood, and even a demon can overcome its blood. It really gives a lot of impact to the specific characters because it's so rare. The show creating innocent demons the way that it does makes it lack significance when a demon is good, because now any bad demon you have to assume is bad by choice. And of course, on top of undermining the entire premise and themes, they cut out demons that were good like Sparta from the world and backstory. As it currently stands, Dante is literally the only demon with power who is good, and I don't think the show is going for a power corrupts type message, but that's sort of what's there now because of this change. It turned an entire different realm, species, place, dimension, whatever, into a shitty third world country with a dictator, and now the series is in a position where it kind of has to kill Mundus and possibly Vergil, and I guess move on to have a continuous travel or passport with a green card between the realms. I don't really know. They've kind of even got racism because they all hate the biracial guy. I don't want to harp on the adaptation aspect too much because the biggest issue is that the show just isn't very good. And frankly, there are people with way deeper knowledge of the lore than a filthy casual like myself. But it's frustrating because with these changes that lacked any care or foresight, we end up being left with a couple less interesting versions of beloved characters with Dante, Vergil, and Lady, and just a really uncompelling story that feels like it needs to jump from one action scene to another because it's so insecure in its writing, which it should be. This video went off the rails and it was way longer than I intended. So if you made it to this point, thanks very much for your time. I really wanted a good Devil May Cry show because you just never know when you'll get another one. And at some point, it just gets disheartening seeing franchise after franchise and story after story and world after world that I really like butchered by people who don't care so that they can stroke their egos and make a quick buck. I also just don't understand how these people get paid so much money and they come up with good concepts, which is the easy part, and the execution is just shit, and it's always shit. You would hope there's more pushback in the writer's room, more people asking questions, more people who take pride in their work and want things to make sense. But obviously that's just not how it works in the real world. It is what it is. Fire Adi Shankar. I'm going to leave it here for this one. If you've seen it, let me know what you think. Try to respond to the comments that aren't just insults. Like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.